Princesses can be beautiful, rich, have status, and not be afraid of the wiles of the evil witch. These young ladies are getting married to a handsome, loving prince now. Puss in Black Boots asks a young lady what kind of princess she wants to be, after which he hands her several cards and asks her to choose one. Now the main character is on the street among people. The girl asks how she can get to the palace, and the woman points out that it is ahead and the young lady should simply follow this road. The saleswoman also asks if the girl came to the princess selection too, and the main character, shocked, asks what she means, too. But the woman tells her to forget about it because it's going to rain. So let her be more careful on the way. And when the young lady cleans up, the saleswoman thinks that the color of her dress is as if all the peas were picked. And the young lady realizes that the card she chose is the princess and the pea. The main character's name is Molly Khan, and she is an ordinary office worker. About an hour and a half ago, she was overworked and fell into an eternal sleep in the office, after which she found herself in a very strange place. The young lady was surprised and asked where she was, but then she heard the sound of a firecracker, after which she saw Puss in Boots in front of her, who congratulated her on her arrival at their princess game department. The young lady looked at the cat in shock and did not understand what was happening. And the fluffy one, after realizing that the young lady does not want to answer, says that this game was created for girls who have left the world of the living. And then the girl screams in shock, asking if she died, and the cat replies that yes, she worked for 72 hours without sleep and also drank only 2 cups of coffee during this time, and she had a severe heart attack. So now she needs to accept reality and listen to the rules of the game. A young lady has 3 years to compete for the prince's heart with 6 princesses in the game, and the girl who marries the prince will return to the real world for 50 years. After this, the cat holds out the cards and asks the girl to choose one of the 7 because she will be the one princess from the card she chooses. But the main character says that, to be honest, she is not very interested in 50 years of life. But the fluffy one then says that he is not finished yet because the winner will also receive 10 million bonuses. After which, the main character says that she is ready, and the cat screams in shock, asking whether she agreed so quickly because of the money. The young lady then looks in surprise at the card she has chosen, and then he asks if it depicts Princess Pia, and the cat says that it is true, and that this lovely princess under 20 layers of mattresses and blankets can feel 1 pea. Then he extends his paw, and a piece of paper appears in the air. The cat tells the girl that she has 10 seconds to memorize her information. And when this time passes, the cat snaps his fingers, after which the young lady falls into the princess game. And now, being near the imperial palace, the girl thinks that she has finally arrived and that she is now Princess Pia. First, she had to find a castle on a rainy night, pass questions to make sure she was a princess, and then prove she was one by dreaming on a pea. Then the girl knocks on the palace door, after which a maid opens the door and asks if the girl is the princess who came to see His Highness. And if so, then let her follow her. The main character then wonders in surprise whether the maid should have asked her first and why they weren't following the script. But then she looks at one of the paintings and thinks it's huge. And the maid, noticing the girl's gaze, says that this is a portrait of His Highness, the only prince of their country, Vincent. Then the woman begins to admire the portrait and asks if His Highness is not beautiful. But he is the most gentle and charming man in the world, so she doesn't know what kind of lucky woman will become his wife. The main character, looking at this portrait, thinks that he has a face like an actor, but she has already grown out of the age when you throw yourself at any handsome guy. And the only thing that makes her heart beat faster is a lot of bills. The maid opens the door and says that His Highness has a weak and sick body, so he wants to have an heir as soon as possible. Moreover, a recruitment was opened and princesses from all over the world came to the palace. So she hopes that someone will be able to become a worthy match for the prince. After this, the young lady is given a number and told that she is the 40th princess. The young lady is surprised by this and thinks, what the hell is this, and where could there be so many princesses? And then she realizes that the Golden Rose Empire is the most powerful and huge. Therefore, in order to choose a suitable partner for the prince, their country will conduct a test. The maid tells the young lady that the hall is there and asks her to wait. But the young lady sees that there are still many princesses in the hall, and she feels sorry that they are only playing roles in a written story. After all, only those who know the fairy tale will be able to pass the test. But then the young lady notices a bright light. The rich clothes and proud personality make it seem like the true embodiment of the mare of princesses. But when the girl looks at her, the main character thinks why she has such an angry look, after which she bows down. The blonde merely nods in response. The other princesses begin whispering, and one of them asks where the new girl is from. After all, she'd never seen her at social events. And even though she was a young lady in a simple dress, she was very beautiful. Another girl says she could rival Her Highness Princess Vivian. But Vivian then flaps her fan and asks if the girl just said that this princess can compete with her. And the girl then apologizes to Her Highness. After which she says that Her Highness's kingdom is the most powerful and prosperous, and that she is also the most noble princess. Then one of the servants enters the room and cries out that His Royal Highness and Princess Helen have arrived. A pleasant-looking young man and a girl with blue hair enter the room, and the main character then thinks that real people are more beautiful than their portraits. And it's not a lie. The blonde-haired young man says that on this rainy and cold night. The ladies bring spring to this castle. Afterwards, he smiles and thanks everyone for coming to meet him on behalf of their countries. The girls then almost go crazy and say how wonderful the prince is. After this, the guy takes the hand of the girl standing next to him and asks to be introduced to Princess Helena. The girl bows, and His Highness claims that they met by chance in the forest and she was quiet and did not speak at all. But now she has the status of a princess and she will become his alternative princess. The guy also says that he would like to be friends with all of them, and the girl thanks His Highness for his love. And the main character thinks that this is a fairy tale about a swan princess, or that there is a girl like me who plays princess games. The main character, looking at the young lady, understands that there are 7 players, and she was the first to enter the palace. Taking advantage of the opportunity, well, suddenly the girl notices that her finger is really burning. And looking at her hand, she remembers that in her description, it was indicated that the mole on her right finger begins to become hot when it is in danger. At that very moment, someone pushed the young lady and she fell right at His Highness's feet. The knight immediately pulls out his ball and screams at how rude it is, after which he asks how a living girl dares to show disrespect to His Highness. When the main character sees a sword near her neck, she understands that someone pushed her, but she still can't prove it. So the girl apologizes and says that she just wanted to greet the prince, but the scary one asks if she still has a show to put on. The blonde princess also joins this conversation and tells the guard that the girl is not lying. The main character wonders if Vivian really stood up for her, but the girl only bows and then greets and says that she is the Princess of Gordon and her name is Vivian. The girl claims that a real princess is well-bred and also has dignity, unlike the poor people who have never seen aristocrats. After all, the latter will never refuse mercy. The blonde covers her mouth with a fan and smirks. After which he says that the miss is simply not used to walking on marble floors in palaces. The other princesses immediately start gossiping and say that it's true because she doesn't even have a maid and her dress is dirty. The main character thinks they're talking about her and hinting at her low status. But it could have been Vivian herself who pushed her. Therefore, the girl decides to take action and turns to His Royal Majesty, after which she claims that she did it out of respect for him. The guard then cries out, asking how she dares to speak like that in front of His Highness, but the prince stops him. He asks if the girl did it out of respect for him. The young lady understands that this is her only chance to save herself, after which he clenches his fists and says that His Highness has invited princesses from all countries to choose a spouse, and he had the intention of establishing good relations with all states. But in her country, kneeling is the highest way to express respect. But the guard was ready to publicly execute the princess because of the greeting ritual. The same guard cries out to His Highness that he was only worried about safety. The blonde then leans over to the lady and asks if she is showing respect by kneeling, after which he smiles and says that this is the first time he has seen a nightingale singing so well. And she is right, because the guy really hopes to take advantage of this opportunity to establish friendly relations with all countries. But the guard also acted according to the law, since it is unknown what her motives were. Then the lady with blue hair addresses His Highness. And he says the guard was right, but the princess isn't to blame. The guy then smiles and says to Helen, what she knows is that he never refuses her requests. The prince also tells the lucky lady to thank his alternate princess, as she is innocent. After which the guy turns around and says that he is tired, and the guard shouts that His Highness is returning to the castle. The main character turns to His Highness and thanks him for his forgiveness, as well as Princess Helen. The girl only smiles in response, and the main character thanks her in her thoughts once again. At this time, in the prince's office, a guard turns to His Royal Highness and says that he thinks Miss Vivian is right, because this young lady has a sharp tongue and her personality is suspicious. But the prince says that the chief guard does not seem to understand a woman's heart. After all, a girl with a sharp tongue is not necessarily hypocritical or inelegant. And if the guard does not understand this, then they will continue to play their games. The maid is now telling the respected princesses to place their luggage next to the bed depending on their room number, since His Highness has invited everyone to dine at the palace. The main character then sees all the mattresses on the bed and thinks that they are so huge. And the girls say that the empire is so incredible that even the mattresses there are different. And the main character then realizes that the test for princesses is the same as in fairy tales. After all, everyone has a pea under their mattress, and they need to tell them tomorrow when they wake up that they didn't sleep well, because they can take the test and become an alternative princess. After this, the girls go to a restaurant, and the young lady thinks that she is sitting opposite Vivian again. But she still does not understand why she always likes to pick on her. And when she managed to cross the princess's path, Vivian then puts the last piece of food in her mouth, after which she gets up from the table and says that she's finished. The main character wonders if she's leaving so quickly and decides to follow the princess. But when she enters the corridor, she realizes that the girl is going back to the palace. And the young lady turns out to be right, because the lady with the blonde hair starts whispering something to the maid. The blonde says she ordered the maid to put the peas only under her mattress. The main character is shocked and wonders how the princess found out about the peas and whether Vivian also knows the original fairy tale. The girl wonders why these two princesses are players in her storyline. The blonde lady, after talking to the maid, realizes that she will be the only winner in this test. And the main character then hears the maid heading in her direction, after which she goes around the corner. Well, the floor under the young lady's foot cracks, and the blonde immediately screams out who is there. And the main character is shocked to realize that she is now exposed, but then she sighs because she has a plan. The girl comes out from around the corner and asks why Miss Vivian is there alone, but the maid told her to keep her company. The main character, continuing to smile, says that the palace is in the opposite direction, and the castle is so huge that it's easy to get lost. The lady with blonde hair says that they are alone there, so the princess does not have to pretend. After which, when she passes by the girl, she whispers that she made a mistake and got into trouble again, because for insulting the royal family, she will be put into eternal sleep. The main character then wonders if this princess is threatening her, and then, when she goes to the bedroom, the top lifts up all the mattresses. And after checking almost all the beds, he thinks that the princess conspired with the maid and removed the peas from the suit under the other beds. The young lady understands that if she gives the correct answer without the pea under the bed, the prince will declare her a fraud. So Vivian has thought everything through well, but suddenly someone else enters the room and screams out what she is doing. It turns out to be a guard. He says that at first glance he noticed the girl's bad intentions, so he tells her to answer what she intended to do when she looked under the mattresses. After all, the peas for the test have disappeared, and the man asks if she stole them. The main character then gently grabs the Lord Guard's hand and says that she wants to report someone for fraud. After all, the future of all the princesses is at stake, so she asks to be taken to the Royal Highness. The next morning, the maid wishes the dear princesses good morning and asks how they slept last night. One of the girls says it's very good, and the other claims to have seen wonderful dreams. The main character says that the mattresses are very large, soft, and comfortable. But the blonde says she doesn't agree with the statement about them being comfortable because she didn't sleep well last night. The maid then asks the princess how this discomfort manifested itself, and the girl replies that it was as if something was pressing on her. after which she smiles and thinks that she is the winner. And the maid announces that she is declaring the test complete, after which the prince turns to the princesses and says that the test they went through that night was that a pea was placed under each mattress in their chambers. The girls then ask in surprise what he is talking about, and the prince claims that only those who felt discomfort on their delicate skin could pass the test. But then he realized that this was wrong, and before the princess went to bed, he ordered the maid to quickly replace all the mattresses with new ones. And this is in order to expose the scammers, because last night he received a message that someone is engaged in fraud. And he sent a man to check the mattresses, after which they found a pea in the mattress of only one princess, and she lied that she was uncomfortable sleeping. He then turns to Princess Vivian and asks if everything is correct, after which they ask what her goals are. The girls in the room start gossiping, and one of them says that the princess is a liar. Another claims that after changing the mattresses, she said that she was uncomfortable sleeping. But the main character suddenly notices that her mole has become hot again. And she thinks that this is strange because everything went according to her plan. So why is the mole warning her of danger? Last night in his headquarters, the prince asked the young lady if she suspected Princess Vivian's maid of stealing peas from under other mattresses. And the girl replies that yes, she heard the princess talking about this with the maid, and the guard also checked the peas on other mattresses and they were all gone except for Vivian's mattress. But the guard says she still looks suspicious and also accuses Vivian of fraud. The main character then wonders if he is serious and is going to bully her again. But the prince only smiles in response to this and then turns to Miss Yuana, and he insists that she really doesn't look like a princess. The girl is a little surprised, and His Highness says he can't say that out loud. He accuses Vivian of fraud, so he asks if the girl can provide any evidence of her guilt. The main character thinks that she saw the maid's face and will be able to identify her, after which he smiles and nods and also asks His Highness to remove all the peas from under the mattresses. And if after this in the morning someone says that they didn't sleep well, who can accuse her of fraud? The blonde man says it's interesting, then orders the captain to tell the maid to immediately replace all the mattresses, and the man agrees. The prince then claims that Vivian is the Gordon princess, and even if she seems like a liar, she will be fine. But he asks how the young lady will be held accountable for false accusations. The main character then slams her hand on the table and asserts that she never accuses people without reason. Therefore, he puts his life on the line to guarantee his words. The girl says that if everything she said is a lie, then His Highness can do whatever he deems necessary to her. The guy is then surprised and asks if she is so sure. He claims that he appreciates Miss Yuana's determination and courage, as people like her are very rare to find in the palace, and he takes this matter very seriously, after which he says that he hopes she can pass the test. Calling the girl his most special princess, the blonde now only says that in the Gordon Empire she's accustomed to the finest silks, and even the softest beds were therefore uncomfortable for her to sleep on. But the guard only shouts for this deceiver to be detained and thoroughly interrogated. But the princess only asks who dares to accuse the real princess of deception. And the guard immediately falls silent, and the main character realizes that she knew the girl wouldn't give up so easily. But fortunately, she has a witness, after which the main character is grabbed by someone's hand. And then he tells His Royal Highness that this is the maid who stole the good ones on Vivian's orders last night. And she knows that she has no motive to fail the test, so she asks the maid to confess who ordered her to do it and His Royal Highness to have mercy on her. The blonde then gets angry and realizes that Yuana is involved in everything. All the other princesses are shocked, and the servant screams at His Royal Highness that it was the princess who hired all these maids and stole the peas from under the mattresses. The prince then turns to Miss Vivian and says that the evidence is too obvious, so he asks if she can say anything in her defense. But the girl then says that their evidence is too insufficient, because although the maid confessed to stealing from the townspeople, she did not say that she ordered her to do it. After which, the woman approaches the maid and asks if someone ordered her to steal the peas. But then the girl, as if against her will, answers that no. And the blonde asks if she acted on her own, and the girl replies that yes, she did everything herself. The blonde then screams that the maid is so shameless, and how could she dare to disrupt the princess's test and also harm the princess? so she should be captured and beheaded. Well, the main character then tells them to wait because the maid's behavior is somehow strange and something is clearly wrong there. However, the servant is already bringing in the maid, and the main character is wondering why everything is like this and why they want to execute the maid without evidence. But Vivian is also a player, and she used her magical abilities on her. Well, the girl then turns to Miss Yuana and, pointing at her, asks why she immediately pointed at her after the words of this maid. The lady with the fair hair says that when His Highness took her words at face value, she felt pain because the girl was displeased with her and therefore decided to play unfairly against her. The main character clenches her fist and thinks that this is an outright lie, after which she says that these are all empty excuses. And the prince understands that the situation is not developing according to plan. At this moment, Helen walks down the hallway and says she heard some noise. And this is the chamber where the princesses are tested. The blonde turns to His Highness and says that it was the mad woman who accused her of deception and that the prince will not do anything to her. The young man then nods as if ordering something to the guard, but he himself thinks that Yuana put her life on the line and she did not panic. But the situation turned out to be unfavorable for her. After this, two guards grab the young people, causing the girl to scream to be released. The young lady understands that Vivian wants to try again to put her into eternal sleep. After all, according to the rules of the game, it is possible to eliminate rivals for the prince's heart. The main character now thinks that if only the girl could be exposed and removed from the game, but she understands that now the chance of completing the game is 0. The young lady then wonders what will happen to her 10 million and then screams for the guards to take their hands off her. The chief guard turns to His Royal Highness and says that Miss Yuana can no longer stay. After all, she is very problematic and her behavior is too rude. So there is no scent of a real princess there. The blonde thinks about the young lady and understands that although everyone suspected her and the young lady has a lot of problems, but in the eyes of the public, he must make the right decision. But the guy feels that this woman is not the type to use dirty tricks. However, suddenly he hears some kind of scream and orders the guards to stop and let the girl go. Well, when he turns around, he sees that the young lady is only pinning one of the guards to the floor. And then she claims that she needs to tell His Highness something. The chief guard says how strong she is and that the girl can even defeat a knight. The young lady turns to His Majesty and asserts that she has told everything that she saw with her own eyes. And the maid looked strange. And also she had no motive to disrupt the test, so the girl says that if she made a false statement. And once again, he presses on the guard's back, which almost kills him. The prince only tells the young lady to let go of the scary thing, and he will think about this situation again. The young lady then thanks His Highness, and the prince asserts that she will not escape punishment. After all, it would be too reckless to identify Princess Vivian without a thorough investigation. As they agreed last night, why shouldn't she? Not to become a servant in the palace is punishment. The main character then smiles and thinks that the longer she stays in the palace, the greater her hope. And the young lady agrees with the prince, saying that she will do as His Highness wishes. The guy can't believe his eyes, because the young lady didn't refuse to become a servant, and this is quite interesting. So it looks like his garden has undergone some changes, but the girl doesn't look much like a rose, but rather like a cactus. After this, the test for the princesses in the Rose Empire came to an end. And Princess Vivian of the Gordon Kingdom, due to her restless sleep, was the only one who was identified as a princess. And she was appointed as an alternative princess, after which she moved to the royal palace. But the main character is now sitting on a chair next to the headmaid, and she asks if this girl is a princess who is demoted to the rank of a servant. But even if she is from a noble family and becomes a servant, she will have to work hard. She'll help in the kitchen, do the laundry, and live in the stables. The main character, meanwhile, thinks she's back to the life of an eternal worker. Well then, someone asks the manager to wait a minute and asks if this girl can become her personal maid. A little while later, Helen is already showing Yuana her room and says that although the window is small, the girl will still be able to see the garden. The main character then almost cries and thinks that this is 100 times better than the stables. But then she turns to Miss Helen and asks why she helped her. After all, the position of personal maid is offered to ladies from noble families because it is an excellent opportunity for them to marry a member of the royal family. And the princess made her a maid, which means she added a competitor to the competition. The blue-haired lady then says that she did it because Yuana is special and is a princess like no other. After which, she asks if the girl will tell her previous story. And the main character wonders if Helen really recognized her as a player. And after all, she plays the Swan Princess. Therefore, the young lady thinks that she should be careful and not reveal her identity. And the best thing that comes to her mind is to pretend to be a fool. After which, the main character says that she is from such a small country that the princess has never heard of, and she is no different. Therefore, she suggests that it would be better to tell her the romantic story of her meeting with His Royal Highness. The girl is a little surprised by this, but then begins to tell the story with a smile on her face. About her meeting with the prince. A little while later, Yuana realizes that once she became Helen's personal maid, life at the palace became busy and calm. Now someone turns to Miss Yuana and says that she is Princess Helen's personal maid and therefore should not have to do such hard work in the laundry. But the girl replies that everything is fine and the princess dress is made of a different material, so they need to be washed separately and carefully. One of the maids says that Miss Yuana is so polite and capable, while the other claims that the girl was a princess, but she does not have the airs of an aristocrat. However, suddenly the main character hears someone screaming that this cannot be taken away. And when the young lady turns around, she sees that there is some kind of fight going on. One maid throws another on the floor, but then she claims that this silk belongs to Princess Helen, so how dare they? However, the fair-haired maid asks the girl if she knows that Princess Vivian is now held in high esteem. And this color of silk would match the jewelry that he gave to the princess. The maid can't do anything and just cries, and the main character then approaches her and asks what happened. The poor girl then turns to Yuana and says that Princess Vivian has gone too far. After all, she not only mocks the servants, but now she sent her people to steal Princess Helen's silk. The main character then claims that Miss Helen didn't say anything like that. And the maid says that the mistress is very kind and probably didn't want her to worry. Yuana thinks that as soon as Vivian became the alternate princess, she started bullying Helen, and she still doesn't know Vivian's true identity as the player. But now the young lady understands that Miss Helen asked to find her after the girl finished work. However, the young lady thinks that this garden is a damn labyrinth, after which she hears someone cutting bushes. And he asks if there is anyone there, however, when the girl looks forward. Someone notices a young man with snow-white hair. The guy stops after noticing the girl behind him. Then he turns around and looks at her coldly. Yuana even screams at this. The guy claims that Miss Helen is next to the fountain, but the main character then claims she's new there and asks if he can explain how to get to the fountain. Yuana thinks this guy looks like the description of the maids. One of them said that the girl should not provoke the cruel and gloomy guy in the garden, because the blood of a giant, cursed by a witch, flows in him. But the proof of this is his dark complexion, and they say that he buries the bodies of his victims under the crimson flowers in the garden. The main character thinks that if this guy is dangerous, then why doesn't the mark on her hand warn her? The gardener tells her to go straight, then left, and behind Fuji she will see the third statue, after which she should turn right. Yuana doesn't understand what he's talking about, and his words even make her head spin. But the young man then realizes that the girl most likely won't get there on her own, and he throws his scissors into the box and then tells her to follow him. The main character thinks that he seems like a good guy and then goes after him. As they pass by the bushes with yellow roses, the young lady asks if this is a garden of golden roses. The girl wants to touch the flower and asks if the Rose Empire is named after it. But suddenly the guy grabs her hand and tells the girl not to touch this flower. When the main character looks at her hand, she sees that it's wounded. The young man insists that the golden rose is the national flower, bred by the royal family. And because of its prickly needles, this flower is called ruthless, so the young lady needs special gloves. However, the main character only starts giggling, after which she claims that when the guy talks about flowers, he's very eloquent, so it seems he really is a gardener. But then the main character looks at the sun. And realizing she's late, the girl asks if she'll find the fountain if she heads straight through the golden rose garden. After which she thanks the gardener for taking her there and asserts that next time she will definitely thank him. The young man just looks after her, and the main character, while running, thinks that this guy is different from the rumors. And if she makes new friends, it will help in the game. After the main character runs to the fountain, then she sees Helen laying out the dishes on the table, and the main character immediately turns to Miss Helen. And she says that she will take care of it, but the princess tells the girl not to worry because she loves doing this, and she invited Vivian to have tea, so she hopes that the girl will help her. Apologize to the princess. Yuana then says she didn't represent her in the princess test. And he asks Miss Helen to believe. The lady with blue hair says she does. But she claims that Vivian is now the favorite, and she is worried that she hates the young lady. The main character thinks Helen is right, but then someone approaches them and asks what the girls are chatting about. It turns out to be Vivian. She tells Helen that her maid has such a displeased face and her presence nearby will spoil her tea mood. The main character then realizes that as soon as she saw the princess's face, she wanted to punch her. But there is only one reason holding her back, and that is the money she will receive. Helen tells Vivian that the tea will get cold and suggests starting the tea party. The blonde just looks at her competitor with displeasure and then sits down at the table. The blue-haired lady then points to one of the cookies and says that it is her favorite treat, so let the princess try it. Vivian then reaches out to one of them, but when she tries, who says that this is the first time she tries something so tasteless? After which she gives the cookies to the maid and says that this is her reward. But Vivian then turns to Helen and tells her not to worry about it, because she just has great food in her kingdom, and such disgusting snacks are only fit for servants. The main character understands that Vivian does not want to be friends with Helen and came only to offend her. After which Yuana approaches the princess and asks if she has anything against the Golden Rose Empire. The blonde just asks what kind of nonsense this is and how she can have anything against it. But the main character then picks up the cookies and says that her reaction to this dessert, which is made from the national flower of the empire, was a little strange. After all, the princess said that this is a disgusting dish and is only suitable for servants. So the girl asks if she has not humiliated the empire. The blonde then says that this is not what she meant and that she had no intention of humiliating the empire. After which she turns to the maid and tells her to give it back. The maid apologizes to Miss and then claims she took a bite. The main character realizes that Vivian is arrogant and too stupid for this world. After which she says that since the girl humiliated the empire, she needs to eat dessert after the maid. And she can do it, Vivian. Then she realizes that this girl is asking for something to eat after the maid. She eats the cookie furiously and thinks that she will return this humiliation to Yuana 100-fold. But then someone comes up to them and asks if he missed anything interesting. Helen tells His Highness that all sorts of little things should not bother him. And today there is such a strong wind, so the young lady asks why he is not resting in the palace. The young man says they haven't seen each other for several days, so he asks if the girl wants him to leave as soon as he sees her. The young lady tells His Highness not to joke like that. And the blonde, looking at all this, just turns away and says that His Royal Highness does not want to see her. Then the prince comes to her and says that the jewelry she received showed his feelings for her. When the prince sits down at the table, who looks at the main character and thinks that this is funny because every time something happens, this girl is always nearby. The prince claims that he is there to tell them something and claims that when Vivian entered the palace, he had 2 alternative princesses. The father was very pleased with this and sent them gifts, and in 10 days there will be a banquet where they will be officially presented as contenders for the title of princess. The people will understand that one of them will soon become their only princess. And the girls are delighted. Helen says she'll start preparing, and Vivian insists she just bought some expensive dresses and hopes His Highness will come and help her choose them personally. But the prince then merely coughs, and the 2 princesses turn to him worriedly. The young man insists he's fine and tells the captain of the guard to take the necklace to the princess's quarters. The guard says that then His Highness will have to get to the palace himself. But the guy claims that he will find a maid to help him, after which they point to the main character and say that Miss Yuana should lead him. The girl is in shock and wonders if she will see the prince off. A little while later, they find themselves in the Golden Rose Garden, and the main character realizes that she never thought that being alone with the prince would be so easy. But in order to establish contact with him, you can accidentally fall on him. And the first step will be to seduce him, the second to marry the prince. And the last and best thing is to finish the game and get your money. But the main character thinks that the prince already has an opinion of her, so she needs to be more careful. However, the prince looks at the young lady and how she is lost in thought, after which he leans towards her a little and apologizes, at the same time claiming that he doesn't feel very well. The guy also says that Miss Yuana has such a tense body and asks if she's afraid of him. These girls have the courage to scold Vivian, but she's afraid of him. Yuana asks if His Royal Highness despises her for hurting Vivian. And the guy asks what she's talking about because how can he despise such a cheerful girl like her? However, at this moment, the main character lifts His Highness into her arms and says that since he is not feeling well, who offers to carry him to the palace? The main character understands that she has read so much, but she cannot believe that she is about to seduce this fabulous guy, and as soon as she thinks about it, she gets goosebumps. The prince asks Miss Yuana if she is really a girl, since she has more strength than the guards. And the main character says that this is all for His Highness, so she asks him not to worry. But when they are already approaching the palace, a guard meets the young lady and screams how she could treat His Highness like that, because what would have happened if she had fallen straight on him? The guard then leads the prince away and exclaims at how inappropriate this behavior is, since he's already silent about such behavior toward the princess. The prince tells the captain he's dizzy and asks if he can keep his voice down. And the main character thinks about those words that she doesn't look like a princess. The girl understands that she did everything in order to live well in her past life, and later she worked in the company and never changed herself. But now the girl decides to try until she wins. Vivian, meanwhile, slams her fist on the table in her room and asks what kind of golden rose flower this is, since she has disgraced herself so much. After which she turns to her maid and asks why she didn't tell her that the filling is the national flower of the empire, and the maid claims that no one knew this. The blonde then wonders if this is a special fact about the world, and that means Yuana is most likely an ordinary girl. Vivienne smiles and realizes that this lady is the princess and the pea, and she is now taking her place. After which, she waves her hand and tells the maid to forget about it, because this time she forgives her, but from now on, let her be more careful. If she doesn't want to hurt herself. At this point, the main character enters Helen's room, and she reports that she's back. The blue-haired lady then asks how His Highness is, and Yuana says she thinks he's fine. She understands that he's been chatting nonstop the whole way, so she thinks he's definitely fine. Helen then rejoices and says that thank God it is so, after which she also thanks Yuana for helping her today. But he asks her to promise not to do such dangerous things again, since he and Vivian are direct competitors. The girl was simply drawn into the squabble. Helen also apologizes for saying this to her. The main character thinks that this reaction is a little strange because she thought that by confronting Vivian, she would be able to bring her to light and show her who she really is. After all, it's possible that the golden rose changed her behavior. But one way or another, Vivian became the winner of the pea competition. So if the girl usually plays a resident of this country, this will allow her to avoid battle for some time. And the main character says she will keep Mrs. Words in mind. A few days later, the man speaks to Miss Helen. They have selected images for the banquet, so they ask her to choose what she likes. The blue-haired lady then turns to Yuana and asks if she'd like to watch it together or if she'd rather take a break. Yuana says, of course she would. A little while later, the main character realizes that it's the weekend and she has nothing to do. And it's good in the modern world because eating noodles while watching another movie is so common. But suddenly, the maid turns to Miss Juana and says that she was told to give this bag of fertilizer to the gardener, but she is so scared. And she heard that the gardener puts people into a crippling sleep and dries them up like a herbarium, and then uses them as decorative flowers, and the only thing he grows is evil. The main character then tells the maid to leave it with her and she will take it to him. And the maid thanks her and then claims that Yuana is the bravest of all the women she knows. The young lady then approaches Alas and says that she has brought fertilizer. The girl says there are so many strange rumors about him and he won't contact any of the maids, except her. The guy says that this is true, and the main character understands that he is honesty itself. But then the young lady turns to him and asks what he is doing, after which he offers his help because last time he helped her. The young man, looking at the sprout, claims that this is a special fertilizer for the golden rose and that everything needs to be finished today. Yuana then looks at the place where the guy's pointing and realizes that this is, after all, a Ghanaian section. The girl understands that she is in deep trouble, but thinks that this is nothing compared to her job, where she worked for 72 hours without a break and died. After which the two are already working in the garden and the main character feels a little tired. A lass hands her a towel and the young lady thanks him with a smile on her face. At this time, in the royal palace, a guard informs His Highness that the court tailor has already left and, as the guy ordered, Miss Helen chose first. The blonde then smiles and says that it is clear and then asks if the strong maid has left. The guard then looks away and says that no, it is she. His Highness then asks what happened to her. The guard replies that she's gardening, which is why the prince is drinking tea. Meanwhile, Helen is choosing a dress, and the tailor assures her that it's ready-made banquet gowns for alternative princesses. And the girl just needs to choose the dress she likes, and after she chooses it, he will simply adjust it to her figure. The girl then notices one of the dresses, and we claim that Miss Helen has good taste. After all, this is the most expensive dress of all, and His Royal Highness provided a batch of the highest quality pearls to sew this dress. The young lady then asks if she can choose it, and the man replies that, of course, and there is no problem with that, after which he offers to take her measurements. The girl says she has one more request for him, and even though she's a fairy tale people, the young people are asking if they can choose another dress. The man replies yes, and he'd be happy to help, after which he takes the lady's measurements and says that she always takes care of others and always treats them to snacks. So he and his wife are big fans of hers. Helen only smiles in response and says that she likes it and that she is often free. An hour later, Vivian asks with displeasure why she should choose the second one. And the tailor claims that because it is an order, well, the maid only tells the guy to leave and not dare to block the way of their lady when she is choosing a dress. Vivian then asks if he is the court tailor, but the guy does not have time to answer. How a girl points to a dress behind her and says she wants it. The man tries to return it to her and tell her that this dress has already been chosen. And the main character at this time tells Helen that she has returned. Well, the lady with blue hair tells her not to come in yet. After which, opening the door, she says that she has a gift. The main character says that she also brought a gift, and the lady with blue hair then suggests that they give them to each other at the same time, to which Yuana agrees. The main character then hands her mistress a bouquet of flowers and claims to have brought her a knowledgeable blue lily from the garden. And Helen says she brought Yuana a new dress. The girls then look at each other and smile, and after that, the main character tries on a new dress. The girl looks great in the dress, but then she asks how Miss Helen knew her size. The lady with blue hair says that she secretly measured the girl today while she was sleeping. And Yuana says that this smacks of perversion. Helen says that the lilies she brought are so beautiful and she will go find a vase for them, but the main character says that this is unnecessary. And taking one lily in her hands, the girl says that the gardener said that the scent of blue lilies is very pleasant and light. After which the girl places the lily behind her mistress's ear and says that this variety was specially bred for noble women. But Miss is always calm, so she thought this unusual scent would suit her. The girl then looks at herself in the mirror, but she can't hold back her tears. Yuana, shocked, asks why Miss is crying. And the lady with blue hair then apologizes for having to see her bad side and claims that she is crying because she forgot the feeling when you have friends. The main character understands that in the modern world, she would love to hang out with Helen, but now it most likely won't work out for them. The young lady then turns to Miss Helen and asks if she hadn't chosen a dress today, and if so, where is it? But the girl, when she hears this, only lowers her gaze and says that she asked to bring that dress into the room. However, at this time, Vivian is sitting on the windowsill in her room next to that very dress. The girl smirks, thinking that no one can steal anything from her, and Helen is already a loser at the banquet. Now Helen claims that the court tailor said she had to give her dress to Vivian, so he can pick out another outfit for her, but this dress is too plain. The main character then becomes thoughtful, and the lady with blue hair says that she didn't want to upset him and took this dress. The girl understands that the tailor respects Helen, but they understand why he broke his promise and whether Vivian used tricks or magical techniques like she did with the maid. Helen turns to Yuana and lightly pinches her cheek, after which she tells her not to worry about her because she's just going to put on this dress. The main character then sighs and says that the miss is always so gentle. But this banquet is a good opportunity to enlist the support of both the nobility and others. His Royal Highness will open the banquet with the first dance, and if Vivian wins, Helen's authority in the eyes of the nobility will fall. The girl insists that the banquet is in just 2 days and the dress needs to be altered. But the main character then turns to Miss and tells her not to give up so easily because she will fix everything. The young lady understands that although she must be on guard with Helen, she still really wants to help her because the girl is also in this world, and she was the first to offer her a helping hand. 2 days later, the banquet began at the Golden Rose Empire. The emperor invited all the nobility, and at this banquet, His Royal Highness was to present 2 alternative princesses. The prince is already standing near the nobility and is preparing to announce the beginning of the banquet. Meanwhile, the main character is carrying a bouquet and realizes that if she had more time, she wouldn't have to run around the garden in a dress. Well, the girl then understands that there is most likely no one there, so she can use the dress and run faster, after which she ties a knot. But then someone turns to Miss and says that the alley is busy. It turns out to be some man who is now offering to show the shortest route. The main character thanks him, and he asks if the girl is new and if she knows him. The young lady says she doesn't know, but he knows this place well and helped me and therefore is a kind person and she will suffer if he is rude. The man then just smiles and tells her to go away. But after all, it's a shortcut to the corner sculpture. Then one of the servants turns to the master and claims that it is already very late. But the man says that they can go. The servant then asks if something happened. His master claims that he simply met a very unforgettable person. The prince at this time claims that the time has come to introduce them to beautiful alternative princesses. Then he introduces Miss Vivian Gordon. People looking at her dress comment on how beautiful her pearls are, and one woman says she heard that His Highness, by the way, brought back some treasure. The girl hearing this smiles and understands that everything went great and the prince will not resist her. But suddenly she hears someone admiring Miss Helen, and when he turns around, he sees this lady who is wearing a dress decorated with lilies. The girl smiles, and all the ladies begin to admire this dress and say that these blue lilies are so elegant. The prince, looking at her, thinks whether Helen crushed Princess Vivian, and she tried hard. Well, then the guy looks at the main character, who still has her dress tied up, and he thinks that he is sure that she is the most amazing. After this, with the emperor's blessing, the prince crowned the princesses. The princess was officially announced in front of all the nobility. The main character, standing among the crowd, also applauded. And he thinks that even in a spare dress, Helen is not inferior to Vivian. But all these days when they worked hard were not in vain. But it was so hard to sew all these lilies on the dress, and the girl is very weak in such needlework. But thank God that Helen copes with sewing very well. But Helen is so quiet and capable. So she definitely has those who love her, and now she has a huge chance of winning. So the main character understands that she needs to think about what to do next. But then the girl notices that the music has already started playing, which means the ball has already begun. Everyone starts dancing with each other, and the girl thinks that she won't be surprised if Helen dances first with the prince. But suddenly someone pushes the young lady, and the girl thinks how strange it is. The birthmark on her hand was practically glowing. The prince then approached his father and asked if he had been his father. The emperor claims that he has not seen one of the guests for an eternity, after which a man approaches them. It turns out to be the Duke of the Empire, whose name is Erwin. He tells Vincent that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and the prince understands that this is Uncle Owen. The man claims that the last time they met, the guy was not as tall as a cane, and now he is getting married soon. The prince then asks if his uncle plans to marry the Duchess. But the man claims that all the noble ladies in the entire empire will choose his nephew, and who would want to marry an old man like him? The prince then claims that his father said that he cannot stand noble ladies, and it seems that this is true. The emperor then asks Owen what he thinks of these two princesses as a possible wife for Vincent. He asserts that they are both excellent princesses, but he likes that cute maid better. The main character then asks if Miss is okay, and she, misunderstanding, thinks something's wrong. Yuana says she encountered a strange man and is now worried about her. The prince, when he looks at the girl, is a little surprised and lowers his gaze. But then he claims that this girl is a very close friend of Helen's and that the Duke can't take love from others. Owen then smiles and says he's just joking. The prince turns to his father and asks what he thinks. The emperor asserts that one of these princesses will become empress, and this princess must have the appropriate personality, elegant manners, and the ability to conquer any country. He had also heard about the princess's behavior in the palace. Helen is generous and loving, as well as calm and wise, and he believes in the state of quality, as precious stones are a rare treasure that Helen is willing to wear at the banquet. So he thinks that the prince should pay attention to her. The prince then says that he understood his father's words, and the main character understands that the performance is over and now it is time for the first dance. It is a passionate love poem about a handsome prince and a charming princess dancing together, and everyone is watching to see who the prince will give his hand to. This lucky woman turns out to be Helen, and Vivan, watching this, is shaking with anger. The prince is dancing with the blue-haired lady at this time, but the girl suddenly begins to feel a little ill. Her heartbeat quickens, and the prince then asks excitedly what is wrong with her, as she is shaking all over. But the young lady then cannot bear it and collapses to the floor. At that very moment, the prince runs up to her and orders the guard to immediately call the court physician. The main character also runs up and, placing her hand near the young lady's nose, confirms that her breathing is even but weak. The prince says that's good, and the main character suddenly feels that her fingers are burning again. And it seems the danger is right there, with that flaming mole and every nerve on edge. It only adds fuel to the whole situation. The main character then wonders if Helen is in this state because of the crowd, but suddenly the girl feels that this is a danger. She was right behind her, and then she grabs the guy with the knife by the hand. He tells the girl to get lost, but the young lady tells him not to try to escape, after which he lays the guy on his back and he, gritting his teeth, curses this damn empire of the Golden Rose. And then she screams that the witch will continue to watch her. Everyone, shocked, asks if the witch has returned, and the main character doesn't understand what they're talking about and thinks, what kind of nonsense is this? But then, looking at the guy lying underneath her, she realizes that he left this life of his own free will. But His Royal Highness, with his outstanding talent and charm, calmed the panicking nobility and the banks resumed operations. After all, girls accept everything that His Highness says as the truth. The main character understands that she needs to leave and take care of Helen, but suddenly, someone grabs her hand. It turns out that it is His Highness the Prince, and the guy claims that this wonderful lady, like an angel, saved his life, after which he asks if she will agree to give him the first dance. Everyone in the room immediately starts whispering about how this could have happened and whether this girl is another one of the chosen princesses. But this lady stopped the assassin with her bare hands, and the princess simply cannot be so rude. The young lady then looks away and asks His Highness if she can refuse, since after everything her legs are so weak. But the guy just says no, after which they go out to the middle of the ballroom and start dancing. The young lady approaches His Highness and says she has something to confess, then claims she can't dance at all, but the young man says it's not that important. So let her just follow his rhythm. The girl does the same while watching how others dance. But suddenly she stumbles and steps on the prince's foot. The young lady immediately apologizes. And Vincent, with a smile on his face, says that it's just one small mistake, so everything is fine. But the girl does it again, unintentionally, and the prince only smiles tensely, after which he tells Miss Yuana that he has never met a girl like her before, and how could she crush a grown man with such clumsy legs? Yuana then smiles despite all the anger she feels and claims that she told him so. At this time, the Duke approaches the Emperor and claims that the panic was quickly calmed down because the Emperor raised Vincent well, but in the end, he chose the lady he liked. After which the Duke and the Emperor clink glasses, and the head of the empire says that he simply hopes that the boy can find a worthy princess in the country of Irvine. While the couple is dancing, the young lady asks if His Highness isn't worried about Miss Helen, as she suddenly fainted after the assassin incident. But the prince says the palace has the best doctors in the empire, and hundreds of noble families were invited to the ball, so he could not let them down. Suddenly, they are near another couple, and the prince sees the young lady. He smiles warmly at her, causing the girl to cry out that His Highness smiled at her. And the guy she is dancing with just looks at the young lady with bewilderment. The main character at this time turns to His Highness and wants to object, but the guy says that he thinks she needs to worry more about him. After all, he was the target of the assassin whom the girl stopped. And this only proves that it could not have happened without the support of the nobles and that a witch was behind it. This woman is a symbol of destruction and brings only misfortune. But when this horror comes, it is the prince who must protect the princesses. Yuana claims that this makes sense and then apologizes to His Highness for misunderstanding him. But the guy, seeing the young lady's face, almost laughs out loud and claims that Miss Yuana is so easy to deceive. The girl then asks if he just tried to scare her. The prince says that if she continues to be so insolent, he will fall into danger in this palace. When these two finish their dance, the people still cannot stop whispering. And at this time, the blonde stands all alone with a glass. Looking at the crimson wine, she understands that His Highness ultimately chose this Yuana, but she, the alternative princess, was left alone. Suddenly, someone turns to Miss Vivian and asks if she will allow him to ask her to dance. He claims that even if His Highness did not choose her, well, before he can finish his sentence, that glass of wine plops down on him. And the blonde, with anger on her face, asks if he dares to feel sorry for her. The man then wipes his face and screams that this vile woman dares to humiliate the nobility. But he invited her only because she was standing there in a bad mood. Everyone in the hall starts whispering and saying what a disgusting character she has, and that is why His Highness doesn't like her. The girl just clenches her fists listening to all this gossip, and the main character at this time is in the corridor. She takes off her heel and thinks that dancing with the prince is a double test for both body and soul. But her feet now hurt terribly. But suddenly, a message comes from the system, and someone announces that all the players' princesses should pay attention, as it's time to announce the game's progress. The main character realizes it's the voice of Puss in Boots. Fluffy says that even though the first month of the game has come to an end, some players took the necessary measures early, but others were unable to maintain their progress. However, time waits for no one, and the game's difficulty is about to increase. Therefore, he asked the princesses to work hard to achieve a high position and marry the prince. Now the blonde lady remembers her life before she fell into eternal sleep. Someone informed the girl that her car was already parked, and then the young lady headed towards her husband. When she walked out the door, the guy greeted her with his bouquet of flowers, and the girl realized that when she was still alive, she had a loving fiancé. For her birthday, the guy gave her a beautiful blue pendant and congratulated her. But the girl puffed out her cheeks and said that this was again such a ridiculous thing. And only because she likes the guy, she forgives him for such cheap gifts. However, a little while later, she was already screaming whether her husband had broken off his engagement with her only because of this girl. She also asked if she was better than her, but the man said that he had enough of this princess's manners. And this girl is very gentle and also attentive, unlike her, and it is with her that he is happy. The blonde then came closer to him and claimed that he had said that he loved her character, after which she turned to that poor girl and asked if this creature had sentenced him. But the man only pushed the young lady and screamed at her not to dare approach her. This immediately sent the blonde flying back down the stairs, and she realized that before her death, she felt only hatred. Now the girl opens her eyes, and she realizes that this was the basis of that dream about her past life. The girl thinks that she will no longer allow tender girls to take away what belongs to her. And it doesn't matter whether it's that damn girl or Helen. This time, she definitely won't lose. The girl understands that her magical abilities are the most powerful of all, and she will definitely win, after which she will return and take revenge on that man. At this time, the main character receives some kind of box, and the guard claims that it will be a gift to Miss Helen from His Highness. The main character conveys her gratitude to His Highness and, terribly, thanks him too. But he only asks if Miss Helen is still awake. Yuana replies that, unfortunately, she hasn't woken up yet. But the night passed very peacefully, and perhaps she's simply overtired. The man then claims that His Highness also instructed him to bring her to practice her dance skills. The main character is surprised by such words. The guard then says that yesterday she tried hard to protect the crown prince, and before he said all sorts of unpleasant things about her, but the girl made him look at her differently. After which he claims that he will go and says to tell Miss Helen to get well soon. The main character realizes that the chief guard turns out to be a good person. After which she approaches Miss Helen and thinks that even the court physician said that she is healthy, but the girl does not understand why the princess still does not wake up. But then the girl wonders if there really is a witch involved, because that cat also said that the game difficulty has been increased and she always had a bad feeling about it. After which, the young lady immediately runs out of the room and realizes that she needs to talk to someone in the know. The young lady also turns to the maid and asks her to sit with Miss These. She will be back soon. And then the girl runs to the gardener. The boy only tells the young lady not to ask him about the witch. After all, his birth is considered a witch's curse, and the color of his skin speaks of this. So no one will believe his words anyway. But the young lady says that she will believe him because he taught her gardening and always helped her. Well, suddenly the guy puts his hand to her mouth, after which he takes her around the corner and tells her to be quieter. After which they watch someone and the cashier offers to talk to the guard there because it looks like there is no one there. The main character realizes that this voice is very familiar, and the main source at this time asks to speak faster because His Highness is waiting for him. The blonde then smiles and asserts that the length of their conversation is up to him. The man simply tells Miss Vivian that he knows what she wants and that she wants to regain His Highness's favor. But the girl claims that it seems that the event that took place at the banquet has become the property of the entire palace. And the man says that, unfortunately, he is only one of His Highness's guards and cannot help her in any way. The main character then realizes that the head guard is a very reliable person, but the girl suddenly drops her ball and asks if the guard will help her pick it up. The main character then looks at this golden ball, and when she sees that the guard picks it up, she realizes that smoke is coming out of the ball. After which, a girl appears to form out of it, who tells the servant to obey, causing him to completely lose all willpower. And kneeling down, he hands Her Highness the golden ball and then asks her to give him another order. The young lady looks at this in shock and wonders what happened to the head guard. The blonde just orders him to go and tell her prince about something, and the main character sighs but is a little in a stupor. When the gardener notices this, he asks the girl if she's okay, and the young lady remarks that she's fine and just finally realized something. She adds silently that Vivian isn't a rival to the princess and the pea. After all, she is the princess from the fairy tale about the frog prince, and this golden ball is her magical power because the person who picks it up will immediately begin to obey her commands. Vivian didn't follow her own storyline and deliberately interfered with others. While the other players are replaced, the enemy hides in the palace and strikes with impunity, and the main character is the one whose place she took and remains in the palace, risking her life. Yuana realizes that she is now just like some kind of scum, and the young man with blonde hair asks the girl if she suspects that Vivian might be a witch. The young lady just shakes her head and claims that she doubts, and that is why she came to him for help. Because as soon as she entered the palace, the finger became her first friend. And the gardener then says that she is also his girl, because she is his only friend there. The main character looks at him a little surprised, then smiles and claims that it seems they are not very popular there. A short time later, Yuana is already heading to the royal library. According to the gardener, the most reliable information about witches can be found there. But suddenly, one of the guards declares that servants are forbidden from entering the royal library and that it is intended exclusively for nobles. The young lady then wants to return it. But suddenly, someone approaches her and asks if his companion could come in. It turns out to be the Duke. But the guard still insists that even if it is His Excellency, he cannot bring his servants or maids into the library. and the man replies that everything is indeed very strict there. The young lady thanks him for his help and says that she will probably go, but the guy tells her to wait. After which, the two of them go a little further behind the tower. And then the guy is already in the bushes and looking through them at something. The main character, seeing the position he is in, asks His Excellency what he is doing there. But the man claims that when he was a child, there was a secret hole in the wall. And although there are a lot of guards there during the day, you can slip in at night when there is no one there. Then the servant turns to Duke Irvine and informs him that his carriage has arrived. However, when he sees two faces in the bushes, he looks at them in bewilderment. At this time, His Highness asks if the guard really thinks that Helen helped the assassin, and the man replies that yes, otherwise why would she have fallen into a coma so suddenly? The blonde then sternly tells the guard to bring Helen to him when she wakes up, because he wants to listen to the girl. But Helen is one of his alternative princesses, so he hopes that this is not true. However, then another girl enters the room and addresses His Highness, claiming that she accidentally overheard him talking about the assassin, after which the girl asks if she can tell him something about this situation. At this time, the main character says goodbye to the Duke and he thanks Miss Yuana for a wonderful time, because thanks to her, he plunged into his childhood years spent in this palace. The young lady then thanks Togo for telling her about the secret passage. And the man then gives her his personal seal and states that the letter with it will be delivered directly to his chambers. So if the girl wants to know anything else about the palace, then she should not be shy and write to him. The young lady then looks at the seal he gave her and becomes a little puzzled and inquisitive. Could she ask why he helps and cares for her so much? But the man, with a smile on his face, replies that it's because the Duke's life is so boring and the only person he has around is that sullen guy who helps him. The knight tells Duke Irvine that if they don't get seated right now, they'll have to spend the night in the carriage. And the man then says that Yuana is an interesting young lady and he wants to help her so that everything works out for her. After which he places his hand on the young lady's head and states that this palace is full of various desires and dangers, and that he also does not want all this to destroy her. The Duke claims that he will wait for their next meeting, and the main character thinks what he meant when he spoke about the palace being destroyed, and whether this is what the prince hinted at during their last meeting. Then the young lady returns to Helen and realizes that she has already woken up. However, looking at the young lady's face, she understands that she is not feeling very well, after which Helen turns to another maid and says she can get out there. Afterwards, the girl does just that. The protagonist sits down next to Helen and asks how she's feeling, since she fainted so suddenly. But the girl just hugs Yuana tightly and grimaces that she doesn't know what to do. The young lady says she has no one to tell. Besides her, the protagonist realizes why she's shaking so much. The girl claims that she cannot touch men and that she was once brutally beaten. If she resisted, they beat her harder, and she couldn't even raise her head to look him in the eyes, so she was afraid to meet men. And when a man touches her, she reflects everything and cannot breathe. But His Highness is very gentle with her, so she can hold his hand. But when they danced, she realized that she was scared and she couldn't do anything about it. Helen, with tears in her eyes, tells Yuana that she is still very scared. The main character wondered if this girl was hers countless times, but when she looked into her eyes, she realized that everything was completely wrong. After which, Yuana takes Mrs. Face in her hands and tells Tanya to be afraid. After all, she is a princess, so no one will dare to intimidate her. The lady with blue hair says that Yuana is right and she is a princess now. Well, suddenly someone comes into the room and tells Princess Helen that His Highness issued an order regarding her, and after checking the mercenaries sent by the witch, they determined that only a nobleman could help him get into the base. And Miss Helen's fainting and the assassin's attack, these two events happen simultaneously and raise suspicions. Therefore, until the case is solved, she is forbidden to leave the palace and visit anyone. The main character then screams that Miss Helen has fainted because... But suddenly, someone grabs her by the clothes, and it turns out to be Miss Helen herself. The girl says that there is no need to do this, believe me. She does not want His Highness to find out about this. The guard, when he states that, frankly speaking, if it weren't for the Royal Highness, the young lady's punishment would have been much harsher, even though she is an alternate princess. When the main character wants to leave the room, her path is also blocked, and the girl realizes that this time Vivian has dealt a powerful blow. Yuana didn't expect the Empire to be so afraid of the witch, and the girl was seriously determined to get rid of Helen. After that day, Vivian became the only alternative princess among those close to the prince. The whole palace noticed that she and the prince had become very close. Helen, meanwhile, waited for her prince every day. Now the main character is sneaking through the bushes at night, and he understands that the hole the Duke spoke about is somewhere there, and to stop Vivian, she must find records that indicate that Vivian's magic is connected to the witch, and the girl is also a player, and my blonde is so strong. The main character picks up one of the books and reads that a witch has enough magical powers to harm people. Over the course of 49 years, witches were discovered in every corner of the empire. But suddenly, the young lady hears some strange rustling and wonders what it is. But when she turns around, she sees a cat there, and the girl wonders where it came from. The cat just jumps from shelf to shelf, and the girl realizes that he resembles the black cat who got her involved in the game. But then the fluffy one seems to smile and pushes one of the books to the floor, which causes it to fall to the ground, and the main character gets very scared. She understands that it is he, because the cat said that the difficulty of the game has been increased and he himself came to make it more difficult. But the girl still doesn't understand why he came in person, and the cat only winks at her. And the girl screams for him not to do that, but he just disappears. Then someone approaches the young lady and asks if she was the one making the noise. It turns out to be one of the knights, telling the young lady to follow him. The girl asks who he is, if this is the Imperial Library, and if they can't get through without breaking into it. However, then the guy pulls the sword from its sheath, and the girl falls silent, after which she goes where he says and understands that she has encountered a secret guard. But when the girl approaches several people, T understands that the prince is there and that he has taken this young lady away. She just smiles and says, "It's her, after all." Let the knights tell His Highness they're leaving, and he tells them to be careful too. After which he turns to the main character and asks if she wants to explain why she is there. The young lady, noticing his cold gaze, tells His Highness that she was simply reading a book and servants are not allowed in, so she came at night. But when the guy starts to approach her, the girl moves away a little, however, when she notices that there are shelves behind her and she has nowhere else to run. She realizes that she has never seen him with such an expression on his face, and her finger is burning. Then the prince comes closer and asks if the young lady is avoiding him and if she is scared. The young man extends his hand and claims that he has always valued her. But the main character, despite this, wonders if he really wants to finish her off. At that moment, the girl starts to run away, but His Highness grabs her by the hand and throws her to the floor. Then he starts pressing on her neck. The guy claims that the girl is a special flower and it's a shame she's open when she doesn't need to be. The main character says that it seems that His Highness's body is not at all sick or weak. Looking at the boy, he wonders if this is his true face. The prince merely asserts that the young lady has a keen mind and excellent skills, and he was considering transferring her to security, but now she has no chance, after which he bids farewell to Miss Yuana. At this moment, the girl remembers her past life. All these people said that the boss keeps her because of her pretty face. Otherwise, how could she have managed to get a job in their company? The young lady also remembers her small apartment and understands that now she has a chance to go back and change everything. Then she reaches out to His Highness's hands and understands that she will not miss this chance, after which she grabs these hands. And she claims she knows about the witch. The prince immediately steps back and tells her to speak clearly. And the main character, having cleared her throat, realizes that she is saved. This step really worked. The young lady approaches His Highness and says that he suspects that one of the nobility has conspired with the witch and sent an assassin. But the boy only asks how she knows what he is investigating. Yuana claims that the noble crests and expensive fabrics from various parts of the empire that the two of them have indicate that they are noble lords from the earlier parts of the empire, and she thinks that they locked Miss Helen away to secretly conduct an investigation into their nobility. Well, His Highness was mistaken because the witch was inside the palace, not outside. The blonde then asserts that he acknowledges her judgment is good, but it's not worth her life. The main character then claims that she saw the witch's magic, however, she has no proof, and if His Highness gives her a chance, she will be able to provide evidence. The blonde then announces a deadline of 10 days and claims that he will give her exactly that amount of time so that the girl will provide proof that the witch is in the palace, since her life is still at stake. Yuana then tries to bargain and says that 10 days is very little, after which she asks, "What about a month?" But the guy still coldly answers 10 days, and the girl then asks, "What about 15 days?" But the guy is still adamant, and the young lady asks, "What about 11 days?" The young man then claims that she was just trembling with fear and now she is not afraid to bargain with him. But the girl only claims that she then begged him, afraid that he would finish her off. But now everything is different, because without her, it will be problematic for him to find the witch in the palace in a short time. So the girl asks why she should be afraid. The guy then tells her to come over and help him put it on, after which he points to the cape. The young lady merely claims that His Highness may imagine following her and then, "Excuse me?" But the young man claims that he does not like to spy on anyone, and she'll have 10 days plus one. The main character then just stares at him, wondering if this guy is the devil, because she so wants to strangle him. After which she finally agrees, and the guy asks if she is cursing him now. The main character is a little puzzled and says, how can she dare to do such a thing? But the young man claims that the expression on her face says something else. Then the two of them head through the library, and the main character turns to His Highness and asks, what if she needs information about the witch? The prince claims that he will give her access to the library, and the young lady asks if she can take the books into her room. But the prince asks if she hasn't already taken them, and the girl then says with a smile that she definitely has, but she wonders when he managed to notice this. But the young lady understands that compared to the gentle prince before, he is now a completely different person, and he looks like a poisonous snake that is ready to jump out poison at any second. But it seems that this is his true face. A little while later, the main character is already lying in her bed and reading about the witch. It says that in the 49th year in the Empire of the Golden Rose, witches began to appear in all corners of the continent. For many years, they committed atrocities, causing famine, floods, and drought. But in the 52nd year, the Emperor of the Golden Empire, William Roscat, personally led the troops. The war with the witches lasted for 3 whole years, and finally they were crushed, and the continent returned to stability again. But the surviving witch hid in the crowd and spreads horror and darkness to this day. The main character thinks that it is now the year 75, according to the imperial calendar, and it was the current emperor who crushed the witches. And behind the assassin, there is a witch who seeks revenge on the empire. Therefore, it seems that Vivian has no connection with the witch, and maybe she just belongs to some category of witches. But the girl then thinks, what about the other princesses, as well as her? After all, she too has a birthmark that warns her of danger. At this point, one of the servants turns to His Highness and says that Miss Vivian has sent him to the prince. She said that today was a beautiful moon and she would like to walk with him in the garden, but suddenly the guy gets very scared and immediately falls to the floor. The prince asks what is wrong with him, since he has not yet answered anything, and the young man only asks if his Eastern mood is bad. The guy then turns to the window and looks at his reflection, after which he just smirks. He turns to the servant with a smile on his face and apologizes for scaring him, after which he claims that he was simply thinking about other things and is very tired today, so he asked to give this cloak to Vivian. After all, it was cold at night and he wasn't around, so he should have sent the cloak earlier, but he hoped she'd like it. The servant then said that His Highness cared so much for the miss and she would certainly treasure it. The guy then says that he hopes so. A little while later, someone shouts that they need to collect their luggage and pack the dishes. The maid also cries out that His Highness loves a velvet blanket, and the main character asks what all the fuss is about and whether His Highness is going somewhere, and the girl asks if Miss Yuana knows. After all, in 3 days His Highness is leaving on a sea cruise, and Miss Vivian will also sail with His Highness, and they will also spend several days and nights on a huge ship on the open sea. And it's so romantic. But the maid then realizes what she is talking about and shudders, after which she apologizes to her friend, telling her that she completely forgot that Miss Helen is now locked in. The main character says that everything is fine, but she thinks what the prince is doing because she needs to get Vivian out of the water, and he only gave her 10 days. And now this scoundrel is trying to take her prey away from her, so the girl would immediately punch him in the face. A little while later, the main character comes into my room, Miss, through the window, and says that she has news for her. The lady with blue hair asks what Yuana is talking about and then tells the girl not to go out the window anymore because it is dangerous. The main character says that she was locked in and only the person bringing her food can enter the chamber. Hey, the girl also says that the lady shouldn't worry because her room is nearby. After which the young lady looks at the notes lying on the floor and asks Miss what it is. And when she picks it up, she sees that it is a letter for Helen about her brothers having suffered, and there is not enough money. The blue-haired lady claims that this letter is from her brother, but now she is under suspicion of His Highness and therefore cannot approach him. The main character understands that if this is an original fairy tale, then everything fits together. After which she asks Minsk what kind of relationship she has with her brothers. They are also men. The girl only slightly sadly claims that her brothers were cursed and turned into swans. Before arriving at the palace, she lived with her brothers and must help them. And the main character then turns to the miss and says that in 3 days His Royal Highness is leaving by sea abroad. If she also sails, she will be able to ask him for help. Well, the girl claims that she can't even leave the room. And a little while later, His Highness asks if the girl wants him to take her and Helen on a sea voyage. The main character then thinks about how best to say this, and then says about the prince that it's enough to doubt, because there are only the two of them there. And the girl then, with a smile on her face, thanks His Highness, after which she asserts that then she will speak frankly. The young lady approaches His Highness and says she only needs proof of the witch. But how will she conduct an investigation if he's planning a journey? The girl claims to be Miss Helen's maid and hasn't noticed anything strange about her. So she asks what if the witch is closer than they think? But His Highness only asks if the young lady is talking about Vivian and if she thinks something is a witch. The main character is a little scared by this and then waves her hand and claims that she didn't say that. But she herself understands that this guy is too perceptive, and the blonde at this time says that if she had not suspected Vivian, who the girl would have no reason to sail the sea with him. But then the young lady asks if he allows it, and the prince agrees. The girl is very happy about this and thanks him for this, after which she turns around and says that she will go tell Miss Helen. Well, His Highness stops her, then gets up from his seat and says that she likes to mess around with flowers. Then the guy goes to the flowers and tells the girl to change the water and all the flowers in her room. He doesn't have any free maids right now, and if she doesn't do this, it will be worse. After which the guy makes a gesture with his hand near his neck. And at the same moment, the main character changes the water under the flowers. Meanwhile, someone walks barefoot near the sea. It turns out to be a beautiful girl with red hair, and someone addresses the princess, after which he claims that her beauty can be compared to the most beautiful waves on the sea. Well, he asks why the girl is obsessed with this man. The young lady just tells her darling not to say anything because she just wants to be free as a bird. The guy is a little embarrassed by these words and agrees with the princess. And 3 days later, His Highness is already heading on a ship. The main character understands that since Helen is still in disgrace, the prince did not really prepare for her departure and the girl was only allowed to take her as his maid. But that was where all her privileges ended. Entering one of the rooms, the main character realizes that there are only the two of them there. And opening one of the closets, the young lady claims that her room is next to Helen's room, after which the girl claims that she will first unpack her luggage. The blue-haired lady apologizes to Yuana for not being able to do anything without her help, and the main character tells her to take advantage of this trip to get closer to His Highness, because she is sure that he will not refuse her request to help the brothers. Helen then smiles and says she will try her best, and the next day, the maid Vivian. He says that Miss is having tea with His Highness, so they must wait, and then the next day. One of the servants also refuses and claims that His Highness and Miss Vivian are admiring the scenery. At this time, His Highness notices someone talking nearby and asks what is going on there. And Vivian says that it's nothing important and it's just a couple of noisy people. After which she turns to His Highness and asks him to look at the emerald ring that he sent her yesterday. It looks great on her. The guy kisses the young lady's hand and claims that it is nothing compared to her beauty. And even if to say more, she is beautiful, like a witch. The young lady only smiles at this and insists that His Highness's compliments are always so sophisticated. The girl understands that the gifts they sent her are incredibly expensive, and that she will marry the prince in accordance with these gestures of love. As easy as pie. Meanwhile, another ship arrives at the shore, and one of the servants immediately shouts that they must quickly line up. The lady with blue hair claims that it is so noisy on deck and asks if something happened about the main game, not saying that she doesn't even know. But after that, a lady with red hair comes out of the ship. It turns out to be the Highland Princess Charlotte. Press meets the girl and tells Miss that they were supposed to meet in her country in 3 days. He also asks what brought her there so early, and the girl claims that it was instead of the tedious wait. She chose to take the initiative. A short time later, they were all already at the table, and the blonde man introduces the Princess of Highland, claiming that she represents her country and is going to them as an ally. He then points to 2 princesses and says that these are 2 candidates for his princesses, Helen and Vivian. The lady with red hair says that these girls are so beautiful that His Highness is a real lucky man, and she feels so insecure. The prince smiles and says that they call her the Pearl of the Sea because she may not be confident in her beauty. Well, the girl just approaches His Majesty and says that he is so handsome, so he should be careful, otherwise she will fall in love with him. However, at that very moment, the lady with the blonde hair slams the table and tells Miss Charlotte that this is unacceptable. The girl then pulls away a little and apologizes to Miss Vivian, saying that she was just joking and asking if she was angry with her. The girl smirks and asks if she despises her and does not want this imperial union to take place. This only makes Vivian even more angry, and His Highness says that Miss Charlotte is their important guest. The main character thinks this girl is capable of shutting Vivian up so easily, and that evening, you better not put your finger in her mouth, or she'll bite you off up to the elbow. And the girl wonders if Charlotte is also a player, because looking at Vivian's anger, it's quite possible. The blue-haired lady clenches her fists at this point and then cries out that she needs to say something to His Highness. After all, they hadn't seen their Highness for so long that But suddenly, the young lady is interrupted by someone breaking a plate. It turns out that it is the same lady with red hair who turns to His Highness and claims that there was something terrible on the plate. All the other girls look at this picture in shock and realize that the girl just almost kissed the prince. Charlotte at this time only smirks, and His Highness orders that the shards be removed from Miss Charlotte. The main character then raises her hand and asks to be allowed to help Miss Charlotte. The lady with red hair then turns to His Highness and says that she is afraid Miss Helen will be angry. But the blonde man claims that she is not that kind of person. The lady with blue hair replies that yes, she is not against it, as long as everything is okay with them. The main character then claims that the basement of Miss Charlotte's dress is dirty, so she offers her help. Joanna claims that, fortunately, there are only a few grease stains and they can be easily removed with white vinegar. And Charlotte says that with such capable maids, His Highness is in no danger. But the prince just looks at the young lady in surprise and wonders what she is up to. However, the main character only smiles warmly and then claims that there won't even be a trace left on her dress. But the girl claims that white vinegar has a specific smell and masks the scent of her perfume. And so she asks Miss Charlotte to let her accompany her so she can change. The prince, when he hears this, only smiles, and the lady with red hair is shocked and does not understand what she is talking about. After which, the girl turns to His Highness and says that she needs to talk to him, but the guy claims that the dressing room is nearby and this maid will show her. The girl then gets a little upset and says that she will move away then, and the main character enters the room and realizes that a similar principal understood her motive, but did nothing, and he is somehow strange. Joanna realizes she has succeeded in taking Charlotte away, and she hopes Helen will be able to take advantage of the opportunity. When the blue-haired lady enters the palace, the main character asks if His Highness has agreed to help, and the girl asserts that the prince is ready to convey to His Majesty the Emperor a request for help for their country. But he cannot guarantee that the Emperor will agree, And since he suspects her of helping the assassin sent by the witch to get into the castle, the situation becomes even more complicated. But suddenly, someone turns to Helen and says that they need to talk, after which he tells her to order her maid to leave. Helen says that Yuana is good, and the blonde says that yes, it seems like she has already completely captivated Helen. After which, the girl turns to the young lady and says that in general, the Kingdom of Gordon can provide assistance to her country. The lady with blue hair then asks what she wants in return, and Vivian claims that she wants the girl to help her get rid of Charlotte. The blue-haired lady then asks in shock if Vivian wants to put her into eternal sleep, and the blonde tells her to stop acting like a naive fool because they are both players and Charlotte is a strong opponent even if she is not a player. But the young lady replies that no, and she is ready to do Vivian another favor, but she does not want to hurt others and offend people. The blonde just tells the girl not to be so naive because she knows how she took out the real princess in the pea. And the lady with blue hair then asks in shock if she's really not the princess in the pea. And the blonde claims that cooperation with her is Helen's best choice, so let her think about her proposal. The main character, seeing Vivian leaving, is thinking about something of her own. Meanwhile, to celebrate the alliance between the two countries, the prince held a dance on board the ship. The lady with red hair sang on that ship, and everyone applauded her. Now, finishing her performance, the girl bows and thanks everyone for their attention, and the prince claims that her singing is truly legendary. The red-haired lady thanks His Highness, but says that it seems that Miss Vivian did not like her singing at all, which makes the blonde a little wary, after which he says that everything is completely wrong and that it was incredible. But at that very moment, they see Miss Helen walking with a sword. The girl comes a little closer to His Highness, after which she takes out her ball and directs it straight at the prince. A little while ago, a servant knocked on Miss Helen's room, but the main character opened the door for him. She motioned for the guy to be quiet and said that Miss Helen was resting, after which she asked what had happened, and the guy claimed that in order to celebrate the alliance between the countries, His Highness had arranged a dance on the deck and was calling Miss Helen. After which the main character said that she would pass it on and close the door. The girl understood that Vivian now saw Charlotte as a rival and would do something, but Helen. She refused to help Vivian, and Juana was never able to find out anything. But she is not surprised that Helen refused her because she is such a kind person. And the main character then realized that only she could do something. Now everyone is in shock, screaming out what happened to Miss Helen. How dare she point the ball at His Highness, and is she really out of her mind? The people with red hair then just lean against His Highness and say how scared she is. And the prince says that everything is fine and that she shouldn't be afraid. He tells everyone to calm down because he is sure that Helen has no evil intent, and the servants then agree. And the girl then smiles and begins her dance with the sword, throwing it in different directions. And her last move is to point that sword at His Highness. Everyone is very worried about him, but the sword stops right in front of his nose, and the guy smiles. And the young lady then continues her performance. And a few moments later, a golden rose appears in her hand. The young lady congratulates His Highness and Highland on the formation of the alliance. People immediately start whispering how beautiful it is and claim that this is the first time they have seen a ball dance, and also claim how beautiful Miss Helen is. His Highness then thanks Helen for her congratulations and says that she always surprises him and believes that no one can compare to her beauty. The main character realizes that this guy is saying his trademark speeches again and thinks that he should just shut up and praise Helen. However, the young man then grabs the girl by the waist and claims that he is a little tired today, after which he asks if she will accompany him. The main character is a little surprised by this and realizes that this was not in her plan. But the prince then whispers that Miss Yuana had better do everything as he says, and the girl understands that this is not very good. When the two of them leave, the lady with red hair watches the couple. She then turns to Miss Vivian and says that it seems she didn't expect that Miss Helen had an ace up her sleeve. The blonde just looks at her gloomily and understands that Helen wanted to refuse her, but can she stand firmly on her feet without her help? The blonde lady thinks that, as she expected, the girl is too naive and thinks that none of them will leave this ship alive. When the prince and the young lady approach the bow of the ship, he says that she can take off her mask because there is no one there. The main character asks how His Highness recognized her. The young man insists that Helen never did such a thing and never fought like that. After all, even though she is an alternative princess, she rarely showed him her love. And the main character then asks His Highness if he invited her there so that she could convince Helen to take the initiative. But the guy then just throws the girl a rope and tells her to pull it. The young lady then takes hold of the rope, but asks if it is something dangerous. The prince asks the girl if she suspects him of harming her, and he tells the main character that it is difficult to answer. The young man then helps the girl pull the rope and claims that he originally wanted to give it to the most beautiful princess of the evening, but alas, they have a strong competitor. That's why the blonde is now saying how lucky she is today, and the main character is asking if luck has really smiled on her. After which she notices how the fish starts jumping out of the water and is a little surprised by this. And then the other fish also start jumping, and the main character, seeing this, says that it's incredible. The prince claims that you just need to use phosphorescent fish bait and it will swim into the net on its own, and then pull a special mechanism and the fish will jump out on its own. The main character says that he really knows a thing or two about romance. And the prince says that he doesn't need romantic tricks to win the maid's heart and her 10 days will soon end. So let the girl figure out how to save her life. But the main character simply says that it doesn't matter to her and that she is very grateful to His Highness. After all, if she doesn't find the witch or is put into a crippling sleep by her, she'll be fine. This was the most beautiful thing she saw before her death, and the best event. The prince is a little surprised by these words, and the main character, looking at her, only smiles. But a little while later, she approaches Miss Vivian. The blonde says it was the persistent girl who did it again, and she says that if she didn't come with something important, then she will finish her off. But Yuana only says that Miss Helen asked her to tell her that she was not feeling well and could not come. The blonde then realizes that she is not the center of attention precisely because of Helen. After which she asks if Miss Helen suffers from seasickness, because if so, then let the girl go with her and she will give her medicine because she has a first aid kit. But a little while later, when the young lady is already in Vivian's room, she then cries out why the girl is so clumsy. And she can't even catch objects. But this medicine costs a fortune, and she brought it with her from the kingdom of Gordon. The blonde also asks why the girl is standing there like a ram and asks him to help her lift everything. And the main character thinks what is happening to her, but then she sees a golden ball on the floor and looks at it in shock. The girl understands that the blonde wants to fix her, but the young lady does not understand why now. Vivian then asks if the girl doesn't want to take the medicine, and the main character says that of course she does. After which she points to the guards and says that they simply distracted her and she is glad that Miss Vivian shared her medicine with Miss Helen. The blonde then orders the party to leave there and not stand with the crowds, after which she turns to the young lady. But Yuana only tells her Royal Highness that it is her golden ball and claims that she is awaiting her orders. Vivian, hearing this, only smiles and then orders the box to be taken to Charlotte's room. The main character claims that she obeys her Royal Highness and then takes the box in her hands. The blonde lady just watches the young lady walk away, and the main character smiles as she turns the corner. A little while later, she releases the frog into the box and says that she has done a good job today. While the main character still doesn't understand why she was ordered to carry a box to Charlotte's room and believe that magic is incredible. Vivian is the princess from the fairy tale The Frog Prince. And according to the original story, the frog takes the ball and returns it to the princess, so Vivian's magic should work on the frog. After all, if she takes the ball instead of her, the hypnosis will work and the young lady will be safe. Well, now, when the main character brings the box to her ear, she understands that there is something there. But when she turns it over, she sees that it's actually a royal emblem and appears to belong to Helen's family. But the box makes a sound like there's a snake in it. And Yuana thinks that Vivian wants to put Charlotte into eternal sleep with the help of a poisonous snake. And thanks to this box, she will blame them and Helen, because that way she will kill two birds with one stone. Well, the main character understands that dressing up as Helen forced Vivian to make her move. So all this needs to be finished within 3 days, and the girl hopes that she will survive it. A little while later, the young lady is tidying up Helen's chambers, and when she notices that the lady with blue hair has arrived, She asks if the miss has returned from her walk and if she has met the prince. But Helen only tells Yuana to come closer, and the main character, not noticing that the girl is worried about something, asks what is wrong with Miss. But Helen then only swings. The main character, seeing this, closes her eyes in preparation for the blow. But this never happens. Now the young lady begins to open her eyes little by little. But when she does, she sees Helen in tears. The blue-haired lady tells Yuana that she thought she would understand, since she said she didn't want to be involved in affairs. And the girl asks why Yuana pretended to be her and went to fight for the prince's attention, because she heard the rustling of clothes when she left, but she didn't think that the girl would go there. And today everyone is gossiping that yesterday she was in the spotlight, putting Vivian in the shade, but she cries out that she doesn't want to step over people's heads for her own goals. The main character understands that she cannot tell Helen about her intentions, but she also cannot lie to her for her own good. So the young lady just bows her head and apologizes to the miss. Helen then calms down and approaches Yuana and says that she is the only person she trusts there and that the girl is also her friend. And she will find some way with her brother, so she asks the girl not to do this again and hugs her. Yuana then closes her eyes and realizes that Helen's tears and her hugs are like silk, enveloping her, and the girl tells Miss that she won't do it again. At this time, Vivian is happily sitting with His Highness, and the arrival then asks if something good happened to her, and the girl says that she heard that there is some kind of sea snake in the sea, and the longer it is hungry, the stronger its poison. But even an adult man will say goodbye to life in a matter of minutes. The prince then asks the girl if she's interested in such things, since he'll send her books when they're at the palace. The girl thanks His Highness, but says she's simply afraid that a snake might be on the ship and bite her. At that moment, a lady with red hair enters the room and tells Sister Vivian that she can tell her about the landscapes of her country. And the girl looks at her in shock. The lady with red hair asks her what the hell her sister is doing and if she wants to see her. And the girl then says that of course she wants to, but she herself wonders why she is still alive and what happened to the sea serpent, and also whether her magic worked. After this, the blonde gets up from the table and asks His Highness to allow her to leave. As soon as the girl leaves, the lady with red hair says that Sister is very strange today. And the girl also asks if Sister Vivian knows that today His Royal Highness is going to declare her another alternative princess. After all, she wouldn't want to compete with Sister Vivian because everyone admires His Highness so much. The girl also says that if she receives his love, she will become the happiest person on earth and His Highness is the only one for her. After which, the young lady begins to move closer and closer to him. However, at the moment when their lips were about to touch, the guy turns away and tells the guards to quickly prepare the documents, because the Golden Rose Empire will sign an agreement with the Kingdom of Highland and they will become a treasure. That is, an official alternative princess. The girl then does not understand how His Highness could turn away, but then she understands that anything is possible and says that His Highness is so attentive. The girl also, with a smile on her face, claims that she already wants to become his girlfriend as soon as possible. At this time, the blonde very quickly walks down the corridor and thinks what happened, because her magic has never failed and she does not understand what the hell is wrong with Yuana. However, suddenly she bumps into someone and it turns out to be that same Yuana. The main character asks Miss Vivian to forgive her, but the girl then only pins the young lady against the wall, and he asks why she didn't do what she ordered. The main character then tells Miss Vivian in a trembling voice that they know, and the girl understands that this is definitely connected with this maid. After which she screams for her to tell everything and not think that if Helen protects her, then she will be untouched. And the main character then says that yesterday she came to her senses and realized that she was standing in front of Miss Charlotte's room with a wooden box in her hands. She was so frightened that she dropped the box and a snake crawled out. The young lady, also trembling, said that the sea snake had slithered away into the sea. But she saw that there were traces of Miss Vivian's nail polish on the box. The blonde then wonders if there were any inaccuracies in yesterday's order that the girl came to her senses in front of Charlotte's room. But fortunately, she doesn't know that she was under a spell. So now the blonde asks if the girl told anyone about her brother, but the main character just asks how she can say anything, because she is an ordinary maid. after which the blonde claims that if the young lady is smart, she will survive by keeping her mouth shut. And let him wait for her at midnight on the back deck in 2 days. And let him come with the box. The blonde understands that she can only use magic once every 3 days and will have to solve all the problems herself. The next day, Charlotte was declared an alternative princess. The main character waited for the appointed day, and when this time passed, the girl was on the aft deck. But suddenly she notices that a blonde is approaching her, and when she comes up to her, she asks if the girl brought the box. The young lady swears to Miss Vivian that she was looking at the box, and the woman says that it is good, after which she holds out her hands. But when she does this, she throws the magic ball on the floor and says that her thing fell. Then he tells the girl to pick it up. When the main character leans toward the ball, she realizes it's a prop. The actor and the illuminated stage are in place. And of course, the dear spectator, so the girl thinks whether he is ready to enjoy the performance. At this time, the emperor is watching the girls, and the main character understands that the magic show is about to begin. The guy understands that the young lady sent him a letter in which it was stated that she would have evidence pointing to the witch. So let the prince come to the back deck at midnight tonight. And the guy understands that Vivian is a witch or not, but she tried to plunge Charlotte into eternal sleep. However, the kingdom of Gordon is not weak, and in order to accuse Vivian, they need irrefutable evidence. So now the prince is sitting by the window and mentally asking Miss Yuana to prove her theory. At this time, the young lady is almost touching the magic ball and thinks that if Vivian's magic didn't work the first time, now she will probably try to put her into eternal sleep. The girl also feels that the mole on her hand is already warming up, and after hypnosis, everything will be like in a fog. Then the young lady grabs the golden ball and realizes that now she can risk her life. After this, everything becomes foggy in the young lady's eyes, and she tells Her Royal Highness that she is awaiting her orders. All the servants are shocked and ask if this is magic and if Princess Vivian is a witch, but she was in the palace all this time. But the blonde then tells them to all be quiet, and the blonde at this time claims that last time her magic didn't work by accident. And it's a pity that it wasn't possible to remove Helen and Charlotte with one blow. But removing the main obstacles is also not bad. So now the blonde orders the young lady to jump into the sea and commit suicide of her own free will. The main character can no longer control her body, so she claims that she will gladly obey her orders. The prince then realizes that the girl will expose the witch. Even if she has to sacrifice herself, their main character is standing at the mercy of the ship at this moment. Behind her is a lady with blonde hair and tells the girl to jump and not make her bored, because she will allow Helen to find her. However, then she is immediately pressed to the floor, and the girl screams out what they are doing. But then the prince passes by her, and the girl turns to His Highness. But he ignores her and only screams out Yuana's name. But it is too late because the young lady takes a step. The blonde then rushes down the stairs, but he still doesn't manage to grab the girl. After all, she is already taking the second step, and the guy remembers how the young lady said that this was the most beautiful thing she saw before her death. And now the girl is already flying toward the water. The prince realizes that things are bad. The young lady is currently at sea. The girl understands where she is and thinks that it means Vivian made her jump into the sea. And the young lady thinks that His Highness saw everything completely, but everything worked out, so therefore it is necessary to say goodbye to this game of princesses. However, then someone grabs the young lady by the waist. It turns out to be His Highness, and he immediately drags the girl up. When the young lady reaches the surface, she clears her throat. But when he sees His Highness next to him, he asks if she is already in the next world. But the guy only asserts that if she continues to talk nonsense, he will throw her into the sea. After which he heads towards the rope ladder, and one of the servants is already descending there. The main character just smiles and says that when the prince speaks like that, she understands that she is still alive, and if the prince saved her, then it means he saw everything that Vivian did. The prince claims that the girl has done a great job, and tomorrow he will tell Helen that he will allow her to be his. But suddenly, large waves crash into the ship, causing His Highness to fall overboard. The servants immediately screamed, worried about His Highness, and then the lady with red hair also runs on board and asks if His Highness has fallen into the sea. The servant claims that His Highness saved Yuana, but he was covered by a wave and they sent 5 guards to search for him, but so far to no avail. The red-haired men then ask in shock how they could allow His Highness to jump into the sea alone. And the knight claims that it all happened too suddenly. The main character already understands that the prince has saved her, but the girl still understands that she needs to calm down now. After all, the main character in this game is the prince. And if he falls into eternal sleep, the game will end with him falling into the sea. Something must happen. But suddenly, the main character, looking at the lady with red hair, realizes that this is a plot from The Little Mermaid. And Charlotte at this time claims that she will go in search of His Highness. Well, what's worse is that Miss Charlotte cannot go because His Highness has disappeared, and if something happens to her, what will they tell the Emperor? But the girl only asks if they want her to throw His Highness into the sea. Well then, someone else enters their conversation and claims that a rope can be used. It turns out it's the main character, and she claims the Highland people feel confident in the incubator and can hold their breath for a long time under it. And Miss Charlotte can even stay there longer than the guards. But if they are still concerned about Miss Charlotte's safety, the young lady suggests tying a rope around her, because if something goes wrong, the lady with red hair will pull the rope, and they will immediately pull her out. And the guard insists that this is a good way, and the lady with red hair tells him to just do what the girl says. And a little while later, the main character already ties Charlotte to a rope. And the young lady thinks that even though she doesn't like it, helping the girl is the only way to save the prince. Because if Charlotte manages to save the prince, then there will be no doubt that she is a mermaid. But if she fails to save the prince, the game will end. The girl now turns to the main character and says that she remembers her, after which he claims that at the banquet she did help clean her dress. After which he asks what the name of the young lady is, and the main character says that she is Yuana. After which he claims that everything is ready and the rope is tied. The girl then turns around and says that the young lady is the best maid she has ever seen. She then winks and states that she really hopes that Sister Helen will give it to her. The main character isn't particularly happy about this, and the girl just jumps into the water. And when she does this, a tail appears from her legs, and a little while later, she can already see. The guy with the tentacles who holds the prince, he then turns to the princess. And a little excitedly, he asks if she wants to kiss this man instead of him. But the red-haired lady only turns to her skilled man and asks if he is still under the control of her magic. And the octopus boy says that even after these 7 days, he voluntarily follows her. And the girl then says that if he loves her, then let him continue to help, after which she leans against His Highness, and she kisses him and tells him that her darling should help her win. At this time, the guards emerge from the water and claim that they cannot find His Highness anywhere, but believe that this is already the 5th search and they have done nothing. The main character, looking into the water, thinks what will happen if Charlotte does not save His Highness. What should they do? Because the game can end immediately or in a few days. But then the girl goes somewhere and the guard asks where she is, and the young lady notes that she thinks instead of waiting in vain, it would be better to prepare a blanket and a warm drink, because Miss Charlotte will definitely find the prince. But then the girl turns to the guards and says that they need to lock up Miss Vivian. After all, when His Highness is saved, she doubts that he will be able to give orders. And that golden ball is the girl's magical item, and she subjugates people when it is lifted. So let the ugly ones remember that it must be lifted carefully. And if they still have soldiers left, let him ask them for help. The guards then say they understand, and the young lady insists she'll go get a blanket. And when the main character leaves, one of the knights thinks what a determined woman she is. But even if the chief guard had been there, even he wouldn't have been as capable as she. A little while later, someone cries out that His Highness has been found. And the ladies with red hair are near the prince supporting Togo. The main character immediately runs up to them and insists that she'll take care of His Highness and that Miss Charlotte should rest. The girl then says that when His Highness wakes up, she should be informed as soon as possible. After which, the young lady lifts the prince in her arms and thinks that now it is clear that she is a mermaid and that she sacrificed herself to save the prince. So now her position should be higher. The servants watching this are surprised because Lady Yuana is hugging their prince. And even they cannot do this. A little while later, the blue-haired lady asks how His Highness is feeling. And one of the servants claims that a maid is looking after him, and the doctor said that His Highness is overworked and therefore needs rest. The girl then says, let the maid rest, because she herself will look after His Highness. However, when the guard wants to object, the girl claims that he clearly worked all night, and she is an alternative princess, and it is her duty to look after His Highness. After this, the girl enters the room and sees several maids there. One of them turns out to be the main character, and she immediately turns to Miss Helen. But the girl says that they can go on vacation because she will look after His Highness, after which she also pats the young lady on the shoulder, from which Yuana shudders. After this, the young lady apologizes to Miss Helen for not telling her about yesterday's events. The blue-haired lady claims she heard that Vivian had magically subjugated the young lady and tried to put her into eternal sleep. Helen also claims she handled it poorly and failed to protect her. And the young lady and His Highness were in danger. And Miss Charlotte, without even thinking about herself, rushed to save His Highness. And she was not even able to do anything. And now she can only free Yuana from looking after His Highness Concrete, offering to do this work for her. The main character then finally agrees, and a little while later, His Highness opens his eyes. When he looks at the girls next to him, he sees that they are sleeping. When you look at the main character and how she sleeps, you just smile. But then the blue-haired lady suddenly wakes up. And then he jumps up from his seat, saying that His Highness has woken up and asking how he feels. The guy claims that he is fine, but his head is still a little dizzy. After this, he turns to Helen and says that the maid helped him expose a witch yesterday. So she has bad intentions, and he wants the girl to become his personal guard. The main character then reflects on why she thought she would become a security guard. But the blue-haired lady turns to His Highness and claims that Yuana is, after all, her personal maid. But at the same moment, the main character falls to her knees and claims that she agrees to be His Highness's personal guard. But if she leaves, Miss Helen will crunch, so she begs the prince to do something that will bring back her smile. The blonde then tells her to tell him about her desire, and the main character then asks him to help Miss Helen's kingdom. The guy just smiles at this and then claims that suspicions about Helen's connection with the witch have been removed. And he just wanted to offer his father support for Sven's kingdom, and he greatly appreciates the devotion of the young lady Helen and hopes that she will also serve her faithfully. The main character then smiles and asserts that she will serve His Highness faithfully and truly. A little while later, a lady with red hair also enters the room and cries out that His Highness has finally woken up. Well, when the girl approaches him, the prince only hugs her. The lady with red hair then tells His Highness that he will strangle her now. And the guy then asks if everything is okay with her, because he doesn't know what came over him. Because as soon as he saw the girl, well, the young lady doesn't let him finish his sentence and says that even if he hurts her, she will still be happy, because when the prince hugs her, she will feel his love. The young man says that she thinks correctly and that he truly loves her. And the woman then asks if she can call the prince by his name. And the guy replies that it was created for him and exists so that she could pronounce it. Then the girl asks if Vincent could introduce her to His Majesty the Emperor, because Highland is a small seaside and she's afraid that she will be looked upon with disdain. She also doesn't have a decent maid, so the girl asks if the prince could ask Miss Helen to give her personal maid. The blonde then asks if the girl is talking about Yuana. After all, if that's the case, he'll find a better place for her, since Yuana is already his personal guard. Meanwhile, the main character stands at Helen's door, about to knock. But at that very moment, the lady with her blue hair opens the door and the sight of Yuana turns to her. At the same moment, the main character says that she will miss him. And after that, the two girls laugh. Helen said she remembered the story with that dress, and the main character insists that she and Miss did a great job back then. She then turns to the blue-haired lady and claims that no matter where she is, she will always be her friend. Helen is a little surprised by this, and then begins to shake. She claims that the young lady has helped her so much and thanks her for Sven's kingdom. The girl starts crying and claims that she can't repay her in any way. And she even got angry at Yuana then. But then the blue-haired lady wipes away her tears and says that from now on she will not cry anymore and will become someone she can rely on. The main character then, with a smile on her face, tells her to promise her, after which they pinky promise each other. A short while later, the main character is already unpacking her things. At this time, the blonde is in prison and asks His Highness to listen to her. And at the same moment, the main character takes the medicine for His Highness. A little while later, the guy is already in the bath. And Yuana, at this time, comes into his room and claims that the doctor told His Highness that he needs to continue taking medication, but the girl does not understand where the prince himself is. After which, she places the mug on the table and tells His Highness that she will leave the medicine there. But when the young lady turns around, she crashes into something. And it turns out to be a prince, tying a towel around himself. The heroine realizes that his body would never tell that he's sick. And how could he have feigned illness for so long? The prince asks the young lady why she's still wearing her maid's uniform. The girl claims the guards on the ship don't have spare uniforms and that she can only get one at the palace. After which she says she'll go. But the prince tells her to wait and sit next to him because he needs to talk to her. The main character understands that these words convey instructions, so she decides not to resist. After which, with a smile on her face, she turns to His Highness and asks what he's interested in. The girl wonders if she'll have to work overtime after such a trip. After all, her boss is only covered by a towel, and this is harassment right there in the workplace. But the prince then claims that Vivian is not the only witch. When she was in prison, she screamed that she was not the witch, and she was not the only one, because Helen and Charlotte were too. And these women were unworthy of being next to him because only she truly loved him. The girl also screamed for His Highness to save her because she did not want to lose. And now the guy turns to the young lady and asks if she knows about other witches. The main character turns to His Highness and says that only Vivian's magic proves that she is a witch, but there is no evidence that the witch is the ambassador of his assassin. The blonde claims that Vivian's situation shows that the palace is not so well protected. And the young lady at this time sighs and thinks that it seems the prince does not know about the princess's game. The young man then points in the direction of the bedroom and orders that a robe be brought to him, as it is cool on the ship. A little while later, when the main character is already helping His Highness dress, he asks if she knows the duties of a guard. The girl replies that he guards the palace and deals with intruders. The prince claims that when the guard sees that the master has just gotten out of the bath, he helps him dress without being reminded. The game's protagonist doesn't realize that this is obviously a dig at her, after which he ties the prince's robe very tightly. The young man then turns to Yuana and insists that the guard must swear allegiance to the emperor. Well, he doesn't want the young lady to do this because she is his personal guard. Therefore, he wants the girl to be faithful only to him and to obey only him. So he asks if she can do it. And the main character understands that as a guard, she will never get married to the prince. Although compared to the alternative princess, being a guard is safe. And she may be next to His Highness, but the girl understands that he cannot treat her only as a guard. And now the young man asks what she is thinking about, and the girl turns to His Highness, after which she claims that he said that he wants her to serve him as Miss Helen. But she is faithful to her only because they are friends. And then the girl asks if the prince wants her to be his friend too. The blonde then states that if her betrayal does this, then he agrees. He then turns to his new friend Yuana and asks if he can give her an order. The main character, looking at the book, understands that it was convincing but was not taken seriously. Meanwhile, the prince insists that this is a list of the positions of all the palace employees, and he wants to know which of them are connected to the witch. His Highness asserts that he will grant her great powers, but women will be very secretive. The young lady then insists that even though the prince called her his friend, she's still his servant. The prince, with a smile on his face, merely tells her not to think things will be so simple, since his friendship must be earned. However, then someone else comes into the room and asks if Vincent is there. It turns out to be a lady with red hair, and seeing Miss Yuana asks if she's there too. Charlotte says that Vincent seems to be such a workaholic, unlike her. And His Highness then waves his hand and tells Yuana that she can go, and the main character obeys. The prince then approaches the red-haired lady and says he has something for her. The girl insists she will cherish everything he gives her, and the guy says that it's not a very precious thing, after which he takes out a red ribbon, and he obliges her on the hand of the young lady, after which he kisses her and asks her how she likes the symbol of his feelings for her. The girl only smiles in response, while the main character leaves the room. Yuana realizes that this is the first time she has heard His Highness's gentle voice, and he even allowed Charlotte to call him by his first name. Therefore, the main character wonders if he is in love with her, but the girl understands that he always saw her tricks, so how could he fall in love with her so quickly? But suddenly, someone addresses Miss Yuana, and it turns out to be the same lady with red hair. She claims she wanted to ask Miss Helen to give it to her, but Vincent beat her to it. The protagonist tells Miss Charlotte that she's very sorry. The lady with red hair then claims that Vincent told her to set her up, and that is why she gives the girl this ring, and also claims so that she does not lose it. However, Charlotte says that this somehow feels wrong. And then she claims that then let it be a gift from her and Vincent. The girl also takes off the ribbon that His Highness just gave her. The main character says that this is a gift from His Highness. The lady with red hair says that it doesn't matter, and Vincent promised to shower her with gifts. So he doesn't mind because she knows his feelings for her, even without these gifts. The young lady then accepts the gift and thanks the Miss and His Highness. But the girl wonders if kindness and gifts are Charlotte's first attack. 2 days later, the main character already puts her seal on the letter in which she apologizes to the Archduke for such a late response. The girl also writes that together with Miss Helen and His Royal Highness, they spontaneously went on an exciting sea voyage, and she has good news for him. After all, His Royal Highness transferred her to his personal guard. And although the training of guards is difficult, she quickly got used to it, and perhaps when His Highness goes to inspect the lands, she will go with him and will be able to see the Archduke. The girl also thanks the man for the letters and gifts he sent her because she was very surprised when she returned and saw a whole mountain. She also writes that she hopes to thank him in person. Now the main character is already putting a wooden sword to the neck of her opponent, and someone announces that Yuana has received first place in fencing. The head guard says that the young lady also took first place in the tactics and endurance training, after which he turns to the other knights and says what pieces of trash they are. Because even the girl who just arrived is better than all of them put together. The knights immediately run up to the young lady and ask her to be their teacher. One of them claims he doesn't want to be scolded by that stinking chief guard again. The main character then apologizes to the boys and says she's a bad teacher. The girl understands that endurance depends on work, and her abilities developed when she tried to survive in the office. So the young lady does not even understand how she can teach them this. Her fencing abilities are due to a birthmark. The girl now understands that one can be a social outcast and then leave this life to become a princess or a guard. Furthermore, the young lady has also learned to quickly respond to the warning signs of her birthmark. A non-fatal danger is indicated by the fact that the moles resemble a pleasant warmth as if from the sun. A major danger that can be avoided is described as a sensation like being burned by hot oil. And the possibility of falling into eternal sleep is described by the sensation of having your entire finger dipped in boiling water. And the girl experienced this for the first time because of this stupid prince. The head guard claims that training is over for today and horse riding is tomorrow, but he doesn't think this is a problem for the girl. The main character, hearing about horse riding, thinks about how people of the 21st century can handle a horse. And a little while later, when they are already sitting at a table with Helen, she only smiles. After which she claims that she thought Yuana was perfect in everything. The main character then turns to Helen and asks her not to laugh at her because she tried so hard on her dress. And the lady with her blue hair says that this is true, and then she notices the young lady's sleeve. The main character says that she probably touched him during training, and Helen tells the girl to give her her jacket. The main character, seeing how carefully she is sewing her jacket, asks if Miss always carries a needle and thread with her. And the girl replies that she likes her hand, after which she finishes. And he claims he'll ask His Highness for a horseback ride and also take her. Their main character is delighted by this and then thanks Miss. The young lady then continues to eat and thinks that it is a pity that she did not meet Emma in the garden this time. At this time, His Highness comes to the Emperor together with the lady with red hair. The boy introduces Princess Charlotte of the Highlands to his father, and the girl then bows and says that it is a great honor for her to meet His Majesty. The man claims that he heard about how she saved his son and that this act of hers deserves respect. The prince claims that the girl is the most important alternative princess for him. But when he looks at her hand and doesn't see a ribbon there, he is a little surprised. The emperor, in gratitude, offers to hold a dance ball for Miss Charlotte next month, and His Highness thanks the emperor, and the girl does the same. But the man then tells his son to stay for a moment, as he needs to talk to him. Once they're alone, the emperor declares that the sea voyage has borne fruit. After all, the kingdom of Gordon wanted to expand its territory, and now they could easily be defeated if necessary. But the man claims that, as his son requested, an envoy will be sent to Sven's kingdom to help. The protagonist's father then tells his son that many kingdoms are eagerly awaiting his marriage and he has the right to choose. The young man then says he understands his father's words. The next day, the main character still doesn't make it to horseback riding practice. After all, the emperor was afraid for the prince's health after his fall into the sea and sent him to the hunting grounds to recuperate. Miss Helen remained in the palace to wait for her brother, who was supposed to come to the empire with his gratitude for the help. But the girl looked a little downcast when His Highness went off with Charlotte. The main character understands that she must go after the prince. But the girl then does not understand at all why the guards, who do not know how to ride on horseback in the luggage, and shouldn't she ride next to her master? Well, suddenly the young lady hears someone talking, and one of the voices claims that he heard that going to the hunting ground is not an imperial order. And they say that Miss Charlotte wanted to go hunting, so the prince quickly gave orders. Another servant says that means it's true. Damn, hunting in this season seems a little strange. The guy also claims that Miss Charlotte enjoys more privileges than Miss Vivian, and Miss Helen has been in the palace longer than anyone else. A little while later, they are already on the hunting grounds, and the main character sees two beautiful horses. The young lady also claims that these two horses are simply stunning, and the man who looks after them says that the white horse is called Mika, and the dark one is called Graphite, and they are the most valuable in the royal stable. But suddenly someone approaches the young lady and says that if he were her, he would not go so close to the black horse. It turns out to be His Highness, and he claims that Graphite is the most obstinate girl. The main character then asks in surprise if this is a girl, and the prince replies that yes, and that Graphite, the girl Mika, is a boy. He then points to an injury on the white horse and claims that Graphite struck him during mating season. The prince then suggests that the girl come and pet Mika, but the young lady replies that it's His Highness's horse. So how can she? The blonde man merely asserts that Helen said that Yuana doesn't know how to ride, so she needs to learn. After which, he approaches the young lady and says that if she doesn't learn, she'll just be bullying her like his horse. Yuana, however, realizes that this guy truly is creepy when he shows his true colors. But when she brings her hand to the horse, she only sighs, which frightens the main character and pulls her hand back. His Highness looks at the young lady and she realizes that he simply snorted. But suddenly the prince's head starts to hurt, and the main character asks if everything is all right with His Highness. The guy claims it's just a little dizzy and he probably hasn't fully recovered from the fall into the water. The main character then suggests going to the doctor, but the prince says it's not worth it and then tells the young lady to mount her horse. The heroine tells the prince that he doesn't need to personally teach her how to ride, and the guy just smiles and says that when he sees her clumsy driving, his dizziness will immediately go away. The girl then turns to His Highness and suggests that he not behave like that in public, because the guards consider him sweet and kind, but the guy claims that he is only pretending to be so. Suddenly, one of the guards announces that Miss Charlotte is there. Now he always turns around and looks at the lady with red hair, but when he turns back, he sees that the main character has already managed to run away. The boy then turns to his horse and claims that it has gotten away from them. At this time in the stable, the gardener is working, feeding hay to the horses, but the people around begin to whisper, and one of the servants claims the guy's skin color is such an eyesore that one can only imagine he was cursed by a witch. The woman claims it's so annoying and doesn't understand why the palace sent this guy as an assistant. And the man asks, what about making him mess around with horse manure? After which he approaches the gardener and tells him to go and collect the horse manure. The young man just turns to him and looks at him with displeasure, and the servant cries out, "What impudence is this? How dare he look at him so arrogantly?" The guy then just turns around and leaves, and the man screams at him to stand still because he will teach him a lesson today. But suddenly, someone kicks this servant in the back. Then he turns around in surprise, asking who dared to kick him. But at the same moment, a sword is thrust into the ground in front of him. It turns out that this is the main character, and she claims that there is no place for injustice on the territory of the Empire. After which she puts the sword closer to the man, but he only screams to the lady guard that this man is to blame for everything. After which he points to the gardener and claims that he was cursed by a witch and is true evil. The man also screams that they cannot work with him. The boy just looks away, and the main character asks what he's doing there. The servant then claims he needs to prepare feed, and the horses are skittish in such hot weather. The young lady then puts the sword back in its sheath and asks if the horses are still unruly. The man replies that they have already returned to normal. The main character asks if the gardener has harmed anyone and if the servant has seen his evil deeds, to which the man does not know what to answer. And the young lady then turns around and claims that it turns out he has learned his lesson and this time she will not report his behavior, so let him think it over carefully. The blonde-haired young man just looks after the girl, and a little while later, they are already walking across the field together. The guy then claims that the witch was first found in his hometown, and it has always been known as the cradle of witches. The witches manipulated his people, and many became soldiers in the witch army. But later, the Golden Rose Empire helped them escape from the witches, but the witch became angry at the traitor and put a curse on them. Therefore, wherever they went, people always experienced only fear and disgust, and these people were always lonely. The guy claims everyone on the mainland knows this story. The main character then takes a bit of a challenge, replying that she's from a small town and her family doesn't like this story, and that there are people who don't believe in legends. The blonde boy smiles and says that she is the first person like her he has ever met. The main character, looking at the guy, thinks why he is so lonely even when he smiles, and memories of how lonely she had been in her past life came flooding back to her. The girl had no time or interest in communicating with people, and it seemed to her that she would spend her whole life like this. But in this world, she has a goal, and making friends with someone is not a bad idea. So now the young lady grabs the guy by the hand and claims that they need to celebrate her promotion to guard, after which she suggests they have lunch. The girl wants to do something to make the guy happier and understand that he has friends. After which she claims that she cooks well and asks where he lives because they can go to him right now. The young man is only embarrassed by this and then turns away and says that if Yuana goes to him, she might be noticed. The main character then asks if he is afraid that she might be equated with a witch, because if so, then he shouldn't worry, because she has earned trust and no one will doubt her. Well, the guy claims that everything is wrong and she is just a girl. And the main character says that no one would put up with gossip about His Highness's personal guard, and the young man then agrees, after which they head to their boyfriend's house, and the two of them cook and then have dinner. And a little while later, they are already heading to the stable, where a young lady feeds a small horse. Meanwhile, at the Duke's estate, the man asks if Vincent has chosen a girl as his personal guard, and his protege claims that it seems his beloved lady is very popular. The idiot then claims that he is always observant, and he asks if his friend has received love letters from very young girls, which makes the guy choke on his tea and tell him not to stir up the past. The Duke then puts down his glasses and states that he is still concerned about the witch, so when the boy is in the palace, he should pay attention to the details. And at the first opportunity, they'll go there immediately. Meanwhile, the prince and the red-haired lady are strolling through the garden, and the girl asks if Vincent would like to go hunting. But the guy claims that yesterday the girl was with him all day, so let her rest. But the young lady says that she really wants to spend time with him, and she's sorry that she only knew how to go to the sea, because after yesterday's horseback ride, her legs hurt so much. After which, she kisses the prince on the cheek and tells him to come back early today because she'll be waiting for him in the bedroom with a surprise. The guy then agrees, but when he looks at the young lady's hand and sees that there is no bracelet there, he frowns slightly and then turned around. The man with red hair realized that the prince was bothered by that ribbon, but she doesn't understand what's so special about her and thinks that she needs to figure out how to get her back, because dealing with the servants isn't that difficult. But suddenly, someone turns to Miss Charlotte and asks if she will send these bouquets to Her Royal Highness's chambers. But the girl says that they should take them to the prince's chambers because she is preparing a surprise for His Royal Highness. One of the servants then claims that His Royal Highness even allows her to be in his chambers. And most likely, the prince loves Miss Charlotte very much, but the girl only claims that she is nothing compared to her sister Helen. But the girl understands that love rarely lasts forever, let alone for 7 days. And the lady with red hair realizes that she needs a more lasting love. Meanwhile, the heroine ties up her horse, and the prince asks if she's checked the surrounding area. The young lady claims she's checked everything and everything is safe. But she understands that the prince always has this expression on his face when he is near her. But today, he's even colder than usual. The guy then hands over the magic balls and claims he wants to see if he can use them. Someone else besides the witch, after all. The witch threatens the security of the entire continent. And for the experiment, he needs a person he can trust. And the main character understands that she is once again a guinea pig. The prince tells her to say what she least wants to do, because he wants to make sure that she is not pretending to be under the control of magic. And the young lady says that the last thing she wants to do now is to approach him because he gives her goosebumps. But suddenly, the main character wonders why such heat is coming from her birthmark and wonders if the ball is real. And the prince drops the ball and tells the girl to pick it up. And when the young lady does so, she does so. She hands the prince the ball and asks him to give her a command. The boy understands that this is not only a magical experiment, but also a test. Therefore, he hopes that the girl will not let him down, after which he orders her to answer honestly. Is she a witch? The main character claims to happily follow his orders and then claims she's not a witch. Well, then the young lady comes to her senses and thinks why she is still in this position and what happened, but it understands that the heat from the birthmark has passed. So it's hard to think whether she managed to hunt, and she doesn't remember anything. The protagonist then turns to His Highness and asks if she passed the test and what he ordered her to do. He replies that everything was successful and that even ordinary people can use this magic, after which he declares that the young lady succeeded. But when she asks what exactly she accomplished, he simply changes the subject and insists that they still have time. So he should follow him because he'll give her a couple of riding lessons. But Yuana only asks if he's tested her loyalty again. The guy asks if it's smart, and the girl replies that of course it is. Because he has a look as if he is ready to plunge her into eternal sleep at any moment, and he needs to be taught a lesson. Because the young lady trips up the principal, he begins to fall off his feet. But then he takes out his horsewhip and asks the girl what she thinks after taking the test. In principle, he won't be able to put her into eternal sleep. But the main character tells His Highness to think clearly because who else will be as close to him as she is? Knowing his true face, well, His Highness only asks if the girl thinks she knows him, and the main character does not answer that, of course. And now he is just angry. And when the guy waves the whip, she claims that it's probably because of them that Charlotte has been really fascinated by her lately. The young man claims that this has nothing to do with Yuana, and the girl then takes the whip from His Highness and tells him that she is the first in the ranking among all the guards. But suddenly the prince pulls the young lady towards him, which surprises her a little, and she claims that first place means nothing. But suddenly the guy realizes that they are already flying into the lake. And a little while later, the two are already all wet. But His Highness suddenly begins to have a headache, and the main sight of the worried cries out what is wrong with him. The girl turns to His Highness and asks if he can wait. But the boy, mounting his horse, says he'll ride Graphite and the young lady should take Mika. The boy also asks if she can handle it. The girl replies, of course, and tells him to hurry up and see the doctor. And then the prince clutches his head and says that he will go. But from a sharp pain, he suddenly kicks the square, from which she immediately jumps up and starts running. The main character then excitedly turns to His Highness. Well, the horse appears very quickly, and the main character understands that he is heading straight into the depths of the forest, where the animals are more ferocious, and if she does not catch up with the prince, he may be in danger. After which, the main character looks at the horse and clenches her teeth. The girl remembers how a young man with blonde hair told her not to be afraid. Because even though horses are big and strong, they are very gentle creatures. so she should just remember 3 things. And now the young lady understands that she must overcome her fear, after which she cries out that they urgently need to catch up with the prince. And the lady with red hair, wearing a scarf on her face, decorates the room with yellow flowers. The girl understands that she did something like this in her past life so that more people would love her. But alas, she was still not very popular, and taking off her bandage, the girl realizes that today is the last day of the spell. Therefore, she thinks that Vincent will not let her down. When His Highness and the main character return late at night, one of the knights cries out whether His Highness is okay, and the young lady claims that when His Highness was about to leave, the graphite suddenly carried him into the depths of the forest. But fortunately, His Royal Highness jumped off his horse and she found him and then brought the horses. The blonde then claims that he doesn't even know where the young lady got such horse riding skills from because he wanted to get there faster and he feels awkward about the whole situation. The young man also claims that from now on he will teach her horseback riding, and the protagonist thanks him somewhat coldly. One of the servants then claims that the prince treats the common guard so well, and that he is, after all, the true crown prince. But the main character understands that he just wants to teach her in order to mock her. The crown prince only asks why Charlotte did not meet him and whether she had not said that she wanted to see him in the evening. The boy then turns to His Highness and claims that Miss Charlotte was very worried about his long absence, and she even led a squad to find him in the forest. The guy then turns to Joanna and tells her to take someone and bring Charlotte to him. He also claims that he will wait for the lady with red hair in his chambers. Well, the main character then turns to His Highness and asks how his headache is. Maybe it would be better to call a doctor first, but he quite answers that he is already much better, so he suggests postponing everything until tomorrow. The young lady then agrees and then wonders if she really cares about Charlotte at all. And entering the room, His Highness notices that there are a lot of flowers there, and when one of them falls into his hand, the guy gently sniffs it. And then he mentally thanks Charlotte for preparing so much for him. But suddenly, the young man realizes that his body has begun to burn and he is breathing heavily. The guy then looks at his hand, all red, and thinks what's wrong with him because it's so hot in the room. The young man also realizes that his mind is completely empty, but suddenly someone approaches him. And the young man, hearing this, immediately pounces on the girl and asks if it is Charlotte. He asks the young lady to say that it is she. However, when he sees in her pocket the ribbon that he gave to Charlotte, he immediately grabs it and realizes that it is she. At this time, the servants inform Miss Charlotte that the search of the hunting grounds has yielded no results and asks whether they should go further. The girl understands that the moon will soon be at its zenith, and if she misses the opportunity today, her magic may no longer work. But the horse seems to be excited by the floral scent emanating from it. But suddenly, all the horses start to go crazy, and the guards scream in shock, asking what happened to the horses. The red-haired lady's horse also starts to rush forward, and one of the guards shouts that they need to protect Lady Charlotte. At this time, a young man with blonde hair is watching all the horses. Earlier, one of the servants had approached Lady Juana and told her she needed to go change first, while another had insisted they would meet in the stables. But the main character had been told that the most important thing was to find Miss Charlotte. However, the guys then pointed a little embarrassedly at the young lady's pants after she looked at them. Then she saw that the pants were torn, and the girl thought about what a conservative era this is. A little while later, when the young lady had already changed, she thought that the change of clothes had not yet dried, and that she might turn into a long dress or thick pants. However, judging by the prince's reaction, Charlotte occupies a special place in his heart. And now she is the closest to winning the game, but then someone puts a hand on the young lady's shoulder. It turns out to be a guy with blonde hair, and he claims that he needs to tell her something because someone has collected a lot of golden flowers that have the properties of a paddy wagon and can knock out a horse. Now His Highness the Crown Prince is pinning the young lady against the wall, and he says that Charlotte still wears it, and that's good. The protagonist realizes she forgot that the ribbon was in her dress pocket. Well, she understands that the prince has inhaled too much of the scent of flowers and is now completely delirious. The young man then grabs the girl by the face and does not come closer to her. And Joanna understands that he is too strong and she will not be able to push him away. The guy then addresses her as Charlotte and continues to move closer. But suddenly, the main character finds a solution to this and simply hits the prince on the head, which makes His Highness fall to the floor, and Yuana thinks that violence or physics work best in such situations. Well, when the girl looks around the room, she realizes that these are those golden flowers, and Charlotte should have known that they act as an aphrodisiac. After which, the young lady lifts the prince up and thinks that the violence worked well. And it would be nice to stay in the prince's bedroom, but she doesn't like being entangled with other people. After which, the girl takes His Highness to her room and thinks that everything is very suspicious, and whether Charlotte wants to get pregnant from the prince. Because if so, then she simply needs to prevent Charlotte from getting close to him. The girl also understands that Emma said that Charlotte could return by morning. But when the main characters are about to leave, someone grabs her hand. And when the young lady turns around, she sees that it is His Highness the Prince. The guy looks at the young lady and asks her not to go and not to leave him alone. The girl looks at the prince with puzzlement, but he only asks if Charlotte will stay with him until the morning. And the main character realizes that the similar effect of the flowers has not yet ended. The girl is already thinking about whether she should just hit the prince and let him sleep it off until the morning. Well, the guy then says that he knows what the girl wants and then drags her to his place. The young man says she doesn't love him as much as she lets on, but her goal is to marry into the empire, as he clearly sees through all her tricks. The protagonist then wonders if he's talking about Charlotte. And the prince says that those flowers were beautiful, and that was the only moment when he almost believed in her love. This is another of the young lady's tricks. The young man also says that she likes to pretend, but she doesn't do it as stupidly as Vivian. She always plays her role, desperately trying to make a good impression on him, and the guy wants to laugh so much from all this. And yet, she is not ideal for the role of the bride. Well, the blonde then claims that he still loves her and hugs the girl a little tighter, saying that they love her because she is so frivolous, but so beautiful. The lady with red hair is on the ground at this time, but a little while later, she is found by a guy with blonde hair. After which he approaches the girl and remembers how the main character said that she suspects Charlotte of having deliberately brought these flowers there to confuse His Highness, and she must save the prince. That's why she asked if he could help her delay Charlotte so that she wouldn't return too early. Now the lady with red hair asks if they sent a guy to find her, and when he nods, then Charlotte claims that she fell off her horse and can't move her leg. So she asks if the guy can look at her because she needs to get out quickly, and the girl thinks that Vincent has already returned. The gardener claims that she has a severe sprain, which is why the girl cannot move her leg. But it would be better for her to rest and return to the palace in the morning. The young lady became a little angry after these words, and he orders the guy to take her to the palace right now. But the young man replies that it doesn't work that way. After which the lady with red hair takes Togo by the chin and says that she knows about his terrible past and that he is rejected. But if the guy helps her, she promises that no one will ever dare say a word to him. The girl also asks if he knows he's taken on the burden of acting on behalf of the entire empire, and he can be convicted. The prince is still hugging the main character at this point, and she says that means he knows everything. The girl understands that this is a chance to take advantage of his condition. The prince says that this is a palace and such things are commonplace for members of the royal family. One of the most important laws of survival is to maintain a beautiful illusion and stage a romantic love story of a prince and princess. The young lady then claims that this is not what he needs. And the blonde says that it seems that the girl's silly head sometimes comes to the right conclusions, but the young lady then asks what he wants. And the guy asks if she would believe him if he said that he simply wants her love with all his heart. At this time, the lady with red hair is already about to climb onto the shoulders of the young man with blonde hair. But when the girl does so, she says that she is not interested in him because she just urgently needs to get out. And the guy then asks her not to move so abruptly, but the young lady's leg then slips off. And it only damages her more. The young man with blonde hair says that it needs to be fixed so as not to cause more damage. And the girl just screams at him to hurry up, but the guy claims that he is not sure that he will be able to treat her in such conditions. The girl then makes a sweet face and asks if he will continue to watch the girl suffer in pain. The guy looks at the young lady a little puzzled and wonders what she is doing. And Helen at this time is sitting in her room and understands that her brother will arrive tomorrow. The girl also thinks whether he will like her friends, but she wants to tell her brother all the latest news. The next day, the lady with red hair opens her eyes and the gardener asks if she is awake. The girl then asks if he walked all night. The young man replies that she injured her leg deep in the forest, and if she walks this distance, she will injure it even more. The young lady then only bows down a little sadly and realizes that the spell has ended. A little while later, she enters His Highness's room, and he sits, sipping his tea. The girl immediately tells Vincent that she is so glad that he returned safely to the palace. But at this time, the main character brings a jar with yellow flowers and then puts it on the table. And His Highness the Crown Prince asks his dear one to explain to him what it is. The lady with red hair asks if these aren't the flowers she decorated his room with yesterday. But there were so many flowers that she can't remember. But the blonde then says that she doesn't deny that she used these flowers, and that's good. Afterwards, the young lady releases 2 rats into a jar of flowers, and, smelling the flowers' scent, they begin to copulate. She tells the protagonist that this is Manhwa. This is a medicinal plant used as an aphrodisiac during estrus in horses. It has a similar effect on small animals and humans. So now the girl turns to Her Highness and asks why she decorated His Royal Highness's room with flowers of this plant, and in such a huge quantity. But the lady with red hair then only pushes her maid. And after that, she rushes to His Highness. She stands on her sore leg and falls to the ground in pain. The young lady tells Vincent that she has such a hard time walking and that last night she went into the forest to look for him and then fell off her horse and seriously injured her leg. But she loves him so madly that she asks how he can think that she wanted to harm him. And she doesn't even know about such a flower. His Royal Highness's room, she asked 2 servants for help. They were stealing dishes from His Highness's chambers. When they brought flowers, she caught them and reprimanded them. But most likely they harbored a grudge, taking advantage of her ignorance, and decided to set her up by using these strange flowers. They're so desperate, so they must be experienced criminals. The girl also turns to His Highness and says to look for their home. They'll definitely find evidence there. Now 2 guards are already taking these people away and claiming that they are guilty of stealing royal property and framing the princess. And therefore, by order of His Highness, they will be executed tomorrow. His Highness turns to the young lady and says that he is ready to believe her and will check these servants. The young lady is already very happy about this, but the guy then asserts, who takes this gift and then shows the ribbon. The lady with red hair looks at her and wonders if the maid returned the ribbon to the prince. And if that's the case, she's quite a loyal dog. The prince now turns to the girl and tells her that she still has a chance to get her back, after which he tells her not to let him down this time, and the girl says she understands His Highness. The girl understands that his voice is as sweet as ever, but the affection in his eyes has instantly vanished. The main character now turns to the prince and says that he knows that those 2 servants have no motive. Well, the guy says that there is no need to remember this, and the young lady says that she told him this morning that Miss Charlotte had set it all up. However, the guy, hearing this, stops, then turns around and asks if she dared to remind him of the morning. That same morning, the prince lay on the bed with his hands tied, and the young lady then with a basin in her hands. She approached the prince and asked if he was awake yet. He told her to untie him right away. He was counting to 3. But the girl then told him to promise that he would not strangle her with this rope when she freed him. However, after this, the young man only began to count down, and the main character looked very worried about this. She turned to His Highness and asked if he remembered what had happened last night. And the guy remembers how he pressed the girl to the bed. He came closer and closer to her. But at one point, the main character could not stand it and took the ribbon from her hair, after which he tied His Highness to the bed. The prince now looks away, and the young lady claims that he seems to have remembered, but the guy asks if she wants to say that she is doing all this for him. Yuana, however, insists that she could have been cruelly put into eternal sleep last night, preventing her from returning to the palace. When the boy is freed, she smiles, after which he asks if she found out how Charlotte did this to him. The young lady replies that she used the yellow flowers she gives to horses as an aphrodisiac, and that this plant drives people mad. The girl also wipes away the traces of the tape and asks him if he thinks that this was the work of Miss Charlotte and if he would like to investigate. Well, the guy asks if he looks like an idiot that women can easily fool. And the main character realizes that the same idiot confessed his love to Charlotte just the other day. Meanwhile, the prince tells the girl to call Miss Charlotte once she's collected the evidence. And now she is still heading for His Highness and asking why he spared Miss Charlotte and executed two innocent servants. But the guy is only asking whether he should sever diplomatic relations between the two countries. Because of her little prank, the girl understood everything as soon as she walked in the door. Well, the main character thinks that this is all too strange because the guy has completely returned to his usual emotionless appearance. And so his love for Charlotte disappeared, and that's why the girl thinks, who else can pretend so skillfully? And when she gets on her horse, the main character realizes that she can't get an answer to this question. So it's better to keep it in her heart because the only progress is this situation with work on the hunt. Now they are all returning to the palace, or the main character is thinking about how much happened on this hunt. But suddenly she sees someone familiar, and it turns out to be Helen. But the young lady doesn't understand who else is standing next to her. The guy comes closer to them and, turning to His Royal Highness, says that it is an honor to meet him. The young man claims to be Helen's older brother, Castor. His Highness says he remembers him and asks if the boy has come to visit Helen, but the young man merely runs up to His Highness. And he says that he came to thank him personally because he saved his damn sister, and now he is so wise and fair to leave their kingdom. The main character then whispers and asks if His Highness has a boyfriend who thinks so highly of him. And the cap replies that his ears are already hurting. Meanwhile, Helen apologizes to Milord, saying her brother likes to chat. The boy insists he's just finally met His Highness and is a little overexcited. But the young man also turns to His Highness and says that he has one request. And after the prince asks what kind of top, the guy asks not to push Helen away, because his sister is honest with him and always tried to avoid him, because she is afraid of men and cannot be around them for long. The lady with blue hair then cries out in surprise, "Why did her brother do this?" And the main character is shocked to realize that he just told her secret. His Highness then asks Helen if this is true, and the girl remains silent for a while. But after this, with tears in her eyes and a shaking voice, she apologizes to my lord because she lied to him. The girl falls to the ground and screams that she cannot interact with men and lied to him. But she is not worthy of his forgiveness, so she asks him to simply allow her to be near him. The main character, worried about Helen, immediately comes closer to her, but her brother gets ahead of her. He approaches his sister and cries out to His Highness that the girl did not lie to him on purpose, because his sister has had poor health since childhood, and she left the palace only for a trip to a country mansion. And later they learned that the man who looked after her offended and beat her, after which she began to be afraid of men, and Helen didn't want them to worry and kept quiet about it. But they found out about everything when the witch cursed them and they turned into swans, because that's when they met Helen. Now the boy turns to His Highness and says that he saved Helen, and that's why the girl wanted to be with him, but she was afraid this secret would make him hate her. The girl, with tears in her eyes, tells her brother that she actually deceived His Highness. And the young man with blonde hair then says that Helen lied to him. The girl then realizes her mistake and just sits silently on the ground. And His Highness then claims that he likes this lie, and the young lady is very surprised by this. The guy extends his hand and says that even if she was afraid, she was still there. And this lie made him understand how much the girl loves him. He remembers how much time passed in the palace before she was able to hold his hand. And he thought that the young lady was just very shy, but it was a sign that she accepted him. The blue-haired lady agrees with His Highness and says that his tenderness made her forget her fear. The young man then claims the weather is fine and suggests they take a stroll together in the garden. But the young lady then asks if His Highness won't punish her. The prince then replies that his punishment is that the girl must not let go of his hand. Helen is embarrassed by this, but then agrees. The prince turns to Joanna and tells her to take care of business when she returns to the palace. The main character agrees, and she thinks that Helen has finally made progress in the game, but the girl is happy for her. However, she thinks that when these two hold hands, she always feels it. Well, the main character doesn't even have time to finish her thought when Helen's brother turns to her and asks if she is Yuana. The young lady is a little scared by this, and the guy just pats her on the shoulder and says that she is Helen's best friend. So he offers to be friends, and the girl thinks that he is too straightforward. One of the maids then turns to the miss and apologizes, but says that the wheelchair seems to be broken. So she will go to security for help so that they can help them, or the lady with red hair tells her to hurry up. Then the main character approaches Charlotte and asks if the wheelchair is broken, but the girl licks it and looks at her angrily. And Yuana understands that Charlotte probably thinks that she fell out of favor with the prince because she gave him the ribbon, although the main character understands that she wanted to remain in the shadows. But everything needed to be resolved. Now the young man with blue hair in shock asks if the young lady fixed everything, and Yuana says that the screws were loose and fell through. So it was easy to fix, and she fixed everything, so Miss Charlotte can return to the palace. But the woman then grabs the young lady by the hand and asks if Yuana feels sorry for her. The protagonist then asks what she's talking about, miss, and she claims that she knows that the girl is faithful to His Highness. But that ribbon is also a gift that she gave her, and His Highness pushed her away because of the ribbon. So the lady with red hair asks if the girl feels guilty before her. The main character doesn't even know what to answer to this and thinks that if she were a simple guard, it would be wrong to hand her over. But they are also competitors in the game. The red-haired lady now says with tears in her eyes that if the young lady wants to help her, then let her help talk to His Highness again. But suddenly a young man with blue hair stands between them and says that his sister is more beautiful when she cries. The two ladies are in complete shock from these words. Opalish screams that although he doesn't know everything is useless if she cries so ineptly. After all, if a young lady has a misunderstanding with Her Highness, then let her go to him herself and let her run away as if there is no one better than her in the whole world. The girl then only turns to Yuana and offers to talk later because it looks like she has guests, after which she screams for the maid to take her to the palace. A little while later, the main character is already laughing out loud and claims that it was a bit rude, but it was worth seeing the expression on the girl's face. The blue-haired boy says he only saw her unpleasant face, and the main character doesn't say, "Wait, if he's straight, he's absolutely stunning." So the boy then asks what straight means, but the main character says it's not that important. A little while later, the girl finds herself in Princess Vivian's room, and she says that everything seems to be fine with the girl. The main character apologizes for disturbing her, but insists she needs to talk to her. The girl, however, insists she has no right to refuse. Yuana then points out that she's still a princess. She looks at the girl chained to the bed with a chain on her leg, after which he turns to the princess and says that she needs to know who she was in contact with before she was caught. But the girl then only screams that she is not a witch and grabs the main character. She shouts that she is the princess of the kingdom of Gordon and the heroine of the fairy tale The Princess and the Frog. So she should be in her palace, and His Highness took her ball. The girl calls the main character names and says that she took His Highness away, after which she asks why he is always blinded by such scoundrels. The maid then approaches her mistress and apologizes, claiming that Miss has been saying these things ever since she was imprisoned. The food and clothing there are of poor quality, and Miss is not accustomed to such things. And the main character then claims that they will report this, and now the girl says that at the present time, only Miss Vivian can say whether she is a witch or not. The girl checked all the palace records. 38 people had close contact with her, and 200 people had encountered her. Half of these people served at the banquet where the assassin appeared, and all of them are now being investigated. The young man then, with a smile on his face, claims that this is a great job, and then she asks if Helen also communicated closely with her. The main character replies that yes, and everyone will be checked, after which she helps His Highness put on his jacket. And the guy says so. Everyone except him and Helen were executed, causing Yuana to drop the jacket. The girl excitedly tells His Highness that this is more than 100 lives, and the man claims that the safety of the royal family is more important. And there's nothing wrong with the girl saving those two servants, but when it comes to the witch, he's not so kind. The main character wonders how he knew she saved those servants, The young lady knows she must indulge the prince if she wants to reach the end of the game. But she wonders what if the price is the lives of innocent people. Having lived there for several months, the girl can no longer view these people simply as characters in a game. The prince looks at the young lady and wonders if such things make her sad. The heroine thinks she's not afraid to face the witch, but she can't bear it. The blonde then turns to the girl and tells her not to think about it, because in the palace, dozens of people are executed every year for theft, and he does not allow her to do this, so let the chief guard deal with it. Yuana then says that she wants to ask His Highness for something. Then the girl says that she wants them to fall into eternal sleep without regrets, and that same evening, music plays on the street. The servants dance with smiles on their faces. Yuana watches it all and then thanks Prince Castor and Miss Helen for helping organize everything. The girl then says that she is always happy to help and asks why the lady suddenly wanted to hold a ball for the servants. Well, the girl doesn't respond to this and just looks at these people and then claims that it's because she's to blame. The young man with all his blue hair then seemed to want to tell her something, but Helen turns to her brother and asks Togo not to say stupid things. The guy says that the girl looks, but the lady with blue hair does not let him finish and only tells him to shut up. The main character then turns to these two and suggests that we talk about this. After which she turns to Miss Helen and asks if she has been getting along well with His Highness lately. The girl replies that yes, and it is all thanks to her brother, because after he told her everything, His Highness treated her very tenderly. And the main character then lies on her shoulder and says that if Miss is happy, then she won't be so sad. The girl understands that even though Helen is her opponent in the game, it is nice to see the girl smile now. There was still half a month left until the prince's birthday, but a festive atmosphere already reigned on the streets. The emperor has been carefully preparing a grand celebration for the prince for several weeks now, and nobles and merchants from across the continent have gathered in the Golden Rose Empire to celebrate the occasion. They brought rare treasures from all over the world and their boundless blessings in the name of the empire. The chief guard shouts that all the guards are there and then claims that a huge number of people will soon flock to the capital. In the meantime, the palace guards will need to increase patrols, and they must ensure that His Highness's birthday passes without incident. He also says to pay special attention to situations involving the witch, because if something happens, then let them immediately report to him. When the man asks the guards if they understood everything, they answer that they do. And when everyone else leaves, the man approaches the young lady, and she says that she has been working a lot lately and today is her day off, because His Highness hopes that she is not worried about the palace cleansing, because she did what she had to. The guard claims that these people are connected to the witch and were supposed to fall into eternal sleep, and the main character says that only Miss Vivian survived thanks to her origins, and it turns out that ordinary people didn't have a chance to live at all. But the man then cries out for Yuana to always remember her duties. He claims he always suspected the girl was too kind and sentimental, and unsuitable for protecting His Highness. Now he's convinced of this, which is why she's disappointed him. The guards aren't telling her that she's resting today, by order of His Highness, after which she cries out that tomorrow she will start work without such emotions. And the main character thinks whether it is really abnormal to act like this. She walks through the garden and thinks that the flowers that she and Emma planted last time have grown very much. And the girl wanted to talk to him, but does not know when he will return from the hunting grounds. But suddenly someone puts a hand on the young lady's shoulder. The warmth is a little frightened, which makes her a little frightened. It turns out to be Helen's brother. The guy smiles warmly, and he asks if Yuana would like to leave the palace with him, and a little while later, they find themselves on one of the busy streets. The main character is a little surprised by Togo's number of people, but then she turns to him and thanks him for the invitation. Helen says he wants to help him choose the best gift for His Highness's birthday, and the girl is his personal guard, so she should know better the preferences of His Royal Highness. The main character, when she remembers the prince, thinks he's evil and cruel and wonders if Kaysor really likes this particular guy. The girl doesn't understand whether His Highness has any normal preferences, after which she says that she only knows that His Highness greatly values the attitude of others towards him, and when a lady's heart is devoted only to him, then this is valued most of all. But suddenly, the main character notices how the guy has become a little quiet. And the young lady is a little puzzled and apologizes, but claims that she can't help in any way. But then the guy surprises the girl by putting on a dog mask and barking. The girl is a little surprised by this, but the young man says that it's nothing to worry about. They can simply go shopping and have fun together. The guy also says he has a large dog that he loves to walk. But then he asks if he offended the girl, and he just sees that she has been in a bad mood lately and would like her to cheer up. But suddenly, someone puts their hand in Castor's pocket. Well, when he turns around, he only sees the thief's grin. And the guy immediately screams that he lost his wallet. But when he turns back, he sees that the main character is already holding the thief in her hands and also hands the wallet to the guy, asking if it is him. The young man then says that Yuana is incredible and practically glows with joy. A short time later, they enter the bar and everyone starts wondering about the skin and how dare a girl come there at such a time. A waiter approaches the young lady's table and tells the dear guests that ever since an assassin sent by a witch appeared in the palace, they have been trying to stay away from these damn people. After all, who knows, maybe they're being recruited by witches. The people in the hall continue to whisper. Some of them say that it was terrible to let her in and beat her. It was so suspicious. And the girl only wilted from this. The main character then asks what kind of nonsense this is, since the baby needs to eat because she hasn't eaten anything for 3 days. So the girl jumps up from the table, after which she runs away and screams that she doesn't need their pity. The waiter tells the miss to put aside this stupid sympathy because they are born that way, but the young man with blue hair tells them not to dare speak to her like that. The man asks what he said to the young lady, and the young man with blue hair then says that she is his bride. The guy gets down on one knee and says that he fell in love with her at first sight and admires her kindness and strength so much. After which he asks if Yuana will marry him. The main character then asks him in shock what he's talking about. But everyone in the room immediately starts whispering. The girl remembers her plan to marry the printer and then return to her world. And she realizes that Castor's plans have intruded. The guy says that even though he's an ordinary baron, he'll always treat her well. And Helen really likes the young lady, so his family won't object to their marriage. And even if she's not ready to marry now, he'll wait for the day when she decides to retire from the prince. People say the guy is barely Lenin yet, and it's no wonder there's such a noble atmosphere there today. Someone else says that now that the witch has weakened, he'll definitely be able to protect her. And she won't have to worry about anything for the rest of her life, so people are screaming for the girl to agree. But then the sound of a plate being smashed on the floor is heard. It turns out it's the main character because she threw the dishes. Everyone looks at the girl in shock, but she claims that this concerns only the two of them and they will sort it out themselves. After all, she is not an actress, so she is not going to provide them with a show. That same girl at this time is watching all this through the window. And looking at the main character, he thinks how beautiful she is. A little while later, the young lady is sitting at the table with Castor, and the guy asks if the girl hates him. He apologizes and claims that he always says inappropriate things, and Helen often tells him to be more careful. But since he and his brothers are the illegitimate children of the king, they did not receive a proper education, and after all, he is an ordinary baron. But he'll do anything to achieve a higher title. The main character merely says with a smile that she doesn't hate him, and she can't agree to become his wife because she has other concerns. The girl understands that whether she wins or loses, she must leave this world. The guy looks at her very sadly, and when the waiter comes up to them with drinks, the young man immediately drinks the entire glass. The waiter turns to the woman and says she's heard a very good man who's infatuated with her. But the main character just puts a few gold coins on the table and tells him to tell her why they say lately that the witch has become weak. The man is already in shock, realizing that the coins are real, and says that the miss asked the right person because their pub has the best reputation and they know the most news. But the girl tells him to stop talking this nonsense and answer faster. And then he says that after the incident with the witch's mercenaries, word of her appearance spread throughout different parts of the country, and there were rumors that the witch was recruiting soldiers and also wanted to start a war again. People from all over the world came to celebrate the prince's birthday and brought with them news of the witch, thereby causing panic. The woman's appearance is no different from usual, and they will not even be able to recognize her. But everyone is afraid that the witch will blend into the crowd and harm people. The main character then claims that this means they decided to make the girl's clan the scapegoat, and the man says that it's all self-defense, because no one wants to deal with a witch. But suddenly their conversation is interrupted by Castor. He turns to Yuana and tells her that he really likes her. And after that, the two of them leave the bar. The main character helps Helen's brother walk. Well, as they walk along the road, they notice the prince and Helen. The lady with blue hair asks if it's her brother. The main character only asks the place why they are there, and without a single guard, the lady with blue hair claims that the prince said that the preparations for the holiday are tiring and they went out for a break. And the prince says that the guard is walking behind. He then turns to the young lady and asks what about her, since she's decided to spend her rare day off drinking. The young man then greets His Highness and explains that he's decided to choose a gift for him and has asked her for help. But the main character shuts the guy's mouth and tells him not to call the prince His Highness outside the palace. The blonde, looking at this, only frowned and then said that he would carry the guy. The main character then offers her help to the lord, but the prince says that he can cope without her, after which the four of them move on. At one of the stalls, the main character shows off a lollipop with blue hair and a skillful lamb. And when they approach another store, they try on jewelry in the shape of a golden rose. The main character finds something to do for herself. When it gets dark outside, they decide to go home. But as they head down the road, Helen says that now she has Juana, her brother, and Vincent. That's why this is her happiest life. When a couple passes by, the main character overhears them talking about a parade. And the young lady asks what kind of parade this is, and the girl with blue hair claims that it is His Highness's birthday celebration. And until the day of the banquet, there will be a parade through the city every day. His Highness is walking with Helen's brother at this time, and he says how delicious the sausage smelled and he would like another glass of beer. But suddenly the guy tells Yuana to marry him. The prince is a little surprised by these words. Then he leads Castor into an alley. The man asks if Castor liked his guard, but the blue-haired boy doesn't understand what he's talking about. And His Highness then asks if he likes Yuana, and the guy then asks with a smile on his face who wouldn't like such a sweet girl. His Highness says that she is his guardian, but Helen's brother doesn't seem very concerned about it. And he asks if she will always be a guard and if the prince intends to keep her by his side as a guard for life. Castor says that he wants the girl to marry him and they will have children, because he will be nice to her. And if she refuses, then he will always wait for her, even when he becomes an old man. The prince then just lets the guy go and says that this is all drunken nonsense, after which he returns to the girls and Helen asks where he was. The blonde then says Castor fell asleep behind the store and asks if Helen can go and keep an eye on him, as he needs to talk to Yuana. She agrees, but tells him not to overexert himself by talking about business. The main character then looks at His Highness, but he only turns around and says that they can go. The girl then looks at him in surprise and thinks, isn't he going to talk about business? If so, then why is he silent? And now she even feels uncomfortable walking alone with him. The guy only turns to the young lady. Then he asks if she didn't say she wanted to buy him a birthday present. And if so, what did she choose? The girl claims her salary doesn't allow her to buy a gift suitable for him, so she doesn't know what to choose. Well, the young man then just turns around with an angry face, and their main character thinks that it looks like he is worried about something, after which she considers whether she should go all in. The young lady stops dead in her tracks after that. And His Highness asks what is wrong, but the girl then says that he lied, because he is not going to talk about business. The protagonist says that with his strength, it's simply impossible for Castor to fall, so she asks what he told him and whether he told her he proposed to her. The girl replies that the prince will abandon her to be faithful to him, and she obeys his orders. She tells him her thoughts, and even if they seem naive to him, it seems that only she is keeping the friendly agreement, and he only lies to her, causing panic. The guy then clenches his teeth and says that he believed in her innocence and gave her chances. So he asks if this is not enough. The blonde also asks if she knows how desperate all these people were when they faced death after tasting happiness, and if she knows how much they were offended by her. But the main character says that he could have been more merciful, while the guy claims that she could have refused Castor right away. But at that very moment, a parade begins to pass by them, showering flower petals. The main character then takes a deep breath. And then he screams that she refused, after which he asks if he is happy now. The guy hearing this is a little surprised, but then a smile appears on his face. And the prince says that he is incredibly pleased, which makes the young lady a little surprised. But suddenly a guard addresses His Highness, and he turns around and leaves. At this point, Helen enters the alleyway and looks for her brother. She realizes the prince told her brother was there, but when she sees Castor, she realizes he's been attacked. The young man then rises and screams for Helen to run. But the girl only asks her brother in surprise what happened, but at that very moment, she is thrown to the floor. The villains behind her say that this is the sister defense, and at first glance, they are very rich. Men tell the girl to give the money, otherwise she shouldn't blame herself for the consequences. The girl just closes her eyes in fear and mentally asks Yuana to save her. At this time, the main character is still at the parade and wonders where the security commander came from. The girl immediately starts running and wonders if something happened to Helen or someone else. At this time, the prince already finishes off these villains and then approaches Helen. The lady with blue hair then shakes and says that she is very scared, but the prince just covers her with his finger and tells her not to be afraid because he is nearby. But then the main character comes out from around the corner and screams for His Highness to be careful. The guy turns around after this, but at that very moment, a guy with a knife flies at him and screams that he is acting for the glory of the witch. The heroine immediately pushes the villain away, but he manages to stab His Highness. The prince then tells Helen that he's fine. But the girl, feeling the red rosette on his shoulders, apologizes in a shaking voice because he is there to save her. The blonde guy just claims he's very happy because it was the first time a girl had hugged him. You pushed me away and didn't lose consciousness. And it's just a small wound. But he never thought that she would bring him such happiness. So the guy also asks if he can be this close to her in the future. The young lady replies that he is the one and only he, and she will never push him away again. Well, the guy clearly doesn't feel very well. Ivan's heroine understands that she needs to calm down. After all, Helen is saved, and that's the main thing. And the girl, looking at the guy lying underneath her, thinks that a witch is involved in all of this. The girl then turns to the guard and says that they need to shut you up, but the man says that they have all already passed away, so it is too late. A little while later, at the royal palace, the main character thinks that it's finally all over. But if Castor hadn't come to Helen, she would have been released sooner. The girl insisted that Miss was already asleep, so they wouldn't see each other that day, and she understood that their family ties were very strong. But the girl thinks that this incident with the witch is a very strange thing. How could they know that His Highness would leave the palace, and why did they pretend to be robbers? Now one of the servants tells Miss Yuana to come in because His Highness wants to see her, and the girl agrees. And when he opens the doors, he sees the emperor there and greets him. The man says that there is no need for formality as it is already late, and tells the girl to come and sit down. But when the young lady does so, the blonde only pulls her closer to him and tells her father that this is his personal guard, whom he was so interested in. And the guy also asks if her beauty is not enough for her to be with him. The man says that the girl is very beautiful and tells his son that he was always very weak and also loved to play in the palace. So he is very worried about him because the witch is very dangerous and he does not want the boy to suffer again. After which he turns to the lady and thanks her for caring for her son. Then the emperor rises from his seat and says he will go to rest and wishes everyone good night. After this, the guy says goodbye to his father, and the main character wishes His Majesty good night. But then she looks at His Highness's hand and asks about what happened today. The guy just says he's sorry, then removes his hand and says it's all for his father. The prince says that he is surrounded by all these women to help him stabilize the situation in the kingdom, and he needs to choose a partner for marriage because this is the right decision. However, if you take a woman too seriously, make concessions to her, make her guards and leave her near you, then he will think that he has forgotten about the duties of an heir, and it is better if he thinks that the reason why the girl is still with him is her beauty. The main character, looking at the guy, thinks why he suddenly explains all this, although she guessed that he behaves this way with princesses to keep them at a distance from you. The prince then says that, of course, it's good that the girl refused this guy Castor, and he will try to be more honest with her, but he asks if the young lady understands that she may not get anything. The guy's ears turn a little red, and he thinks whether the young lady will answer something to what he said to her at the fair, because he said many things so impulsively to influence her. The boy realizes he's always been just a decoration in a glass box, surrounded by a crowd. Many wanted to get to him, but he always built a wall. But now it looks like the key to open this box has been found. The main character then asks His Highness how she can marry him. And the guy, in shock, asks what she said, and the young lady asks Togo to tell her what to do if she wants to marry him. The young man then simply looks away and says that a commoner is forbidden to become part of the royal family. But the main character claims she's a princess too. The guy replies that he sent someone to check, and there's no proof that she's a princess in any kingdom. The girl, a little puzzled, says they need to double check. And the guy says that, however, commoners can find a way to become nobles, and some maids can become adopted daughters of nobles and also receive a title. But this is always accompanied by dirty scandals that pose a danger to the royal family. Men can become nobles if they are honorary knights. This recognition comes from the royal family, and the knight is a lower-ranking nobleman, and it is difficult to obtain a higher title. The girl says that she understands, but the prince then asks her why she asks this and if she likes him. And the main character then confidently says that she likes him, and the guy only says that it's somehow not noticeable on her. And then Yuana suddenly kisses him, which shocks him. The main character kisses him passionately, after which she moves away and asks if he believes her now, because she wanted to start with friendship with him, but now she changed her mind. The young lady claims that unrest has been increasing in the capital lately, so she will find a solution for him with the witch, after which Yuana heads to the door and wishes His Highness's good night. When the young lady comes out, the prince thinks that this is very nice, and lying down on the sofa, he wonders if such a girl really exists in this world. Well, the prince still thinks that it's a pity that she's not a princess, and he also thinks whether the next princess will surprise him. The young lady, when she leaves the room, realizes that although she knows that this is a winning strategy, and she's just a little attached to this guy, but the girl still blushes and thinks that this is very embarrassing.